Our most precious Heavenly Father, be with us tonight as we do the business for the people of Benson and for all the people that are in the house that will have things that they want to talk about. You know what our needs are, and so guide us as we go along. And forgive us of our sins and make us thankful for what we have and what we are about to do for other people. In God's precious name we pray. Amen. Amen. Let's stand and pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I make a motion.
Any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Public comments. I'm going to ask Deborah to come forward and speak.
Hello, thank you for seeing me today. I'm requesting that the contract that we had with the concession stand, the 20% be lowered to 10%. I've given you all a copy of the expenses and the sheets that I have, that the expenses and the profits. And I would like to lower it to 10%.
How long was that contract was for a year, right?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
And I was talking to Matt Smith about it, and he said he called around, and the most of the concessionaires get 10%. The town will get 10%, and so that.
What's
How
the
many
wish of the
times
board?
How many times have you actually been out there now?
We've been out there most of the time. Myself.
No, I'm talking about from the first time. 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
This is 4 weeks.
4 weeks
Mm-hmm.
that we've had ball games for the last 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm. And the expense that you have, the $1,800, that's got more to go with it because you've got more games because on the 15th is when you're due again for the 20%. And that.
Kim, what do you want to do?
We have talked internally. I mean, Matt has called around 10% is kind of the generalized number. So if the board wishes to follow through with our request, then we'll need to make an amendment to the contract. And then we can bring it back on consent at the next meeting.
What's the feeling of the board?
What are our expenses?
Huh?
What are our expenses?
We do not have any expenses as far as the concession stand. I mean, other than the power bill, but Deborah is taking all of it as far as the concession portion during the games.
So the profit on here is your profit. The town profit is under the town Benson percentage, correct?
Yes.
Those three items.
Yes. Yes. The 3 items. And then that's not all of it. There's more.
But she staffs it. She provides all the food and materials. I mean, it's all her.
I don't want to get into a pound cake deal, okay? And I'm all about Deborah or whoever running things out there, because I was out there even during Community Day. It worked great. She helped the police department because they ran out of hot dogs, and she had hot dogs to sell to them or whatever. And it looks like she has been real busy with what she's doing. I just, and we had talked about this a couple of weeks ago, I thought it would be given a little more time. I don't want nobody to lose any money off of it, but
I think your startup and your additional expenses is what really hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
10%. Matt,
Yes, sir.
you feel like that's gonna be fair?
When we first came up with this, 20% was what we charge when somebody comes in to use the facility. If they don't want to rent, they get a percentage. 20% was that, so that's the 20% I came with. When I called around after the fact, places that I know personally, John Smithfield, they said that theirs was 10. And with us not having like a cost involved, anything is profit.
Well,
So anything above what we have. And I'm like you, Will, I don't wanna see anybody lose money, I want everybody to be happy in this situation.
yeah, I think 10% would be fine. We're taking a drop from 20 to 10. I didn't know where the 20 started out while we did that. I thought at one time that you had checked and 25% was about where everybody was, but if you say they're on 10%, I feel like we can do that now. I understand you said at one time you couldn't handle the gates, but now somebody is handling the gates. Okay, I know Deborah hadn't got anything to do with that.
No, we're not handling the gates right now.
Okay, who is handling
Tournament directors come in and handle the gates right now.
So-
As of right now.
the tournament directors?
Right.
So they are charging what per person?
7, 10, 12, $10 a person, $7 a person, depending on the age of the person.
But the tournaments are paying us for renting the fields.
We
I
get the
understand
rental fee
that.
for the field, and then the concession stand money. Is what
We
get
don't
out of
get
those.
anything out of the gates.
Right.
Nothing out of the
Nothing
gate.
out of gates yet. That's not saying we're not gonna be able to handle gates coming up.
Okay, so in the event that we are, the tournament directors will still be paying the same thing to house our fields, to use our fields.
Whether we do gates or not,
That's right,
yeah, they're paying to use the field regardless.
yeah,
Now, whether they wanna use the fields, if they realize they gotta go up the gate, that's another story.
uh-huh.
That's gonna depend on the tournament director. Top Gun or Trip or whoever's coming in to use it.
Okay, that has nothing to do with you, I'm just wondering where that was going to.
I think as far as this goes, I've been out there and you're doing a great job, and I don't think there's probably other people knocking the door down. I think 10% is fine.
Thank you.
And so the 20% is actually what's listed as the town of Benson's percentage?
Yes.
That's the 20%.
I agree from the staffing issues I saw when I was out there with my little fucking ball last spring, compared to having more than the staff at the time. 10% of something is better than 0% of nothing.
That's right. Yeah, I'm all about them running things.
What's the wishes of the board?
I make a motion, we, amend the contract to 10%.
Any other comments? I think it would be a good thing, and this is not adding to your motion, but that you give us this kind of report through the next few months and make sure that this is working out.
Okay,
And once you get all the extra expenses in there, then we're good. So there's a motion on the floor to go to 10%?
Yes, one more question. How often do you all want her to present a report, quarterly or?
Well, monthly would.
Or monthly?
would be good.
okay, I can do that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you.
Okay, you want to call up the Mountain Group?
Is there anybody else for public comment?
No, I'm going to cover that after her.
Okay, all right. So we have the MAPS group here, Miss Becky Vesey. She is going to present us with the salary study that we have been doing. You should have the documents at your desk. There you go.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the board. Pleased to be here this evening. What I'd like to do is take you through the process and methodology of the study, answer any questions you have, pass the document out, answer any questions you have about that, and then after you've had a chance to review it, if you have additional comments or questions, we're happy to come back again. I want to also introduce Erica Phillips. She's the president of the MAPS group. I am now president emeritus. This is the fourth time we've done a study over a period of probably about 26 years for the town. And I'm pleased to be here in my last year as I retire. So just to give you just a quick background, I was HR director in Cary and Durham County, and then came to the MAPS group and have been doing this for over 35 years. Erica was HR director for the town of Holly Springs and retired. She's been working with us for 7 years now, so we're really pleased to be turning things over to her. So I want to start just by walking you through. You see that we've been in business for quite a while. Our services include a number of things in addition to classification and pay studies. We're also updating your personnel policy as part of this study. I think last time I counted, I personally have worked with over 200 local governments in North Carolina in the 35 years I've been doing this, and those are just some examples of some of the places that we've worked. So I want to start by talking about when we do a classification and pay study. We're really talking about two sides of the coin, the classification side of the coin, the pay side of the coin. The classification side of the coin is looking at what are the duties in a job. How do those duties compare to duties in other jobs? Are they very similar? Are they similar enough to have the same title? Are they different? And if they're different, then ranking jobs in terms of which require more education, more experience, more knowledge, more skill, more responsibility, which require less. And I apologize for my voice. My allergies are acting up. In classification, sometimes we recommend a different title. Sometimes because the duties have changed and the title's no longer accurate. Sometimes titles get old-fashioned. We recommend something more modern. Sometimes there's just a better title. And then finally, on the classification side of the coin, capturing the essence of each job in something we call a class specification or job description. So that's the classification side of the coin. The pay side of the coin then says, given a set of duties in a job, what's an appropriate salary range for that job from start to max based on what other places in the market are paying for the same kind of work? Any questions on that one?
When you look at the market, when you say market, you mean municipalities that are our size?
It's actually, and you'll see who we surveyed, but the methodology is to look at who your core market is. So your core market are your most intense competitors. That's the people where your employees can leave and go to work with them. Their employees can leave and come to work with you. So sometimes, they're larger, sometimes they're smaller. If the market is skewed more towards larger or skewed more towards smaller, then we know how to adjust for that. We don't just use an average. We look at the scope. And actually, for example, the size of an organization doesn't really matter when you're setting pay for an entry-level job like police officer. When you're looking at police chief, then you are looking at what's the scope of what's being managed and looking at the size of those organizations. Any other questions before I move on? So you see there are 5 reasons why you want to update your plan. And of course, the first one to be able to recruit and retain employees. And on the recruitment side, obviously having competitive salaries is important for that, but also updating your job descriptions, which have on it good, helpful information about knowledge, skills, abilities, certifications, and kinds of experience that are needed. So it helps whomever's doing the hiring make a good match between the person being hired to do the job and what the town really needs. Studies show that there can be as much as a 40% difference in productivity depending on how good of a hiring decision's made. So having up-to-date job descriptions is an important piece of that. Retain, of course, again, wanting to make sure that the salary range, not just the starting salary, but the whole salary range is competitive. But also recognizing that if employees don't feel like their job description is capturing the responsibilities they have, that can also be a reason why people might leave. Internal equity is looking within the organization, again, making sure jobs are ranked in a proper fashion, but also looking across departmental lines. For example, you would not want to have a situation where you have an administrative assistant in Department A and administrative assistant in Department B. The one in Department A has more difficult job responsibilities, but the one in Department B is in a higher pay range. So creating that equity both horizontally and vertically within the organization in our recommendations, which hopefully then leads to equal pay for equal work, which is a legal piece of this, but it's also our underlying fundamental principle that what we're trying to do with our recommendations is help the town have equal pay for equal work. Maximize cost effectiveness. The best way to describe this is to tell you about a study I did 29 years ago. This was one of the cities near Charlotte, about 175 employees. They'd had a long-term city manager who'd been there over 30 years. His philosophy was that he did not want a pay plan. He didn't want anybody to tell him what he could or couldn't pay. So they had no starting salaries, no maximum salaries. He would bring folks in, set their salary, and then, of course, they'd get increases. He retired, a new manager came in and said, ask us to help them create their first pay plan. When we did that study 29 years ago, we found a custodian that was making $45,000 a year. Now, $45,000 a year 29 years ago is like $75,000 a year now. We found an administrative assistant making $52,000, which would be like $82,000 a year now. And then we found a bunch of underpaid folks. So what was happening in that city is they were using their resources, and everybody has limited resources. They were using them to overpay some folks and underpay a bunch of folks. So the whole idea behind having a plan, having it accurate and up to date, is having a structure that helps management and elected officials make good decisions about where to put resources so the town can hire and keep good people and be fair. And then finally, defensible, two parts to that. One is defensible in the legal sense, and there are a number of laws we pay attention to as we do this. Americans with Disabilities Act, OSHA's Bloodborne Pathogen Standards, Fair Labor Standards Act, just to name a few. The other part of defensible is that what we recommend to you is based on professional methodology. We haven't had anybody whispering in our ears saying, give so-and-so a raise, don't give so-and-so a raise. We're making professional recommendations. So any questions on that one? So there are two things that are going on that create the need to update your plan. One is that over the course of time, the duties and jobs will change. And having last done your study about 7 years ago, there have clearly been a lot of changes. It can be because of new technology. It can be because of growth. And you know, whereas, for example, you might have once had a crew that did a whole lot of different things, over time, they might get more specialized. It can be because of new regulations that change the certifications people have to have. It might be because the town adds or deletes services, that adds or deletes responsibilities. It might be because of reorganizations that change who does what, who reports to whom. So for any number of reasons, what somebody used to do in a job, what's being done in that job now, can be different enough that the job is no longer properly classified. And that's the first place we start. The second thing going on, everybody knows pay changes over time. And most organizations do what we typically call a cost of living adjustment, which usually means kind of following the average of inflation, moving pay up over time. And that's a good thing, but there's a flaw in that. The flaw is that while you're moving pay up on the average of inflation, in reality, some jobs are going up faster than that average, some are going up slower than that average. So what we do in the study is we go to the market and identify the going rate of pay for individual jobs, assign them to the pay plan. Then you go typically another 3 to 5 years adjusting on the average of inflation, come back, do another study, make those fine-tuning adjustments again. Questions about any of that? So the steps in the study, obviously the town identified the need to do it. We started out with going through this information with department heads to make sure everybody understood what we were doing, try to make it as transparent as possible. Every employee completed a questionnaire that was reviewed through the chain of command that identified the employee duties. We reviewed those, and then we also came back and interviewed at least one employee with every different set of job duties to make sure we were clear about the duties so we could accurately classify the jobs, make accurate salary comparisons. We went back to our office, analyzed everything, pulled the salary data together, put together a draft, sent it back to the manager, made very few tweaks, and in a very compressed amount of time are tonight presenting it to you. Any questions about the process? So I want to talk briefly about methodology. First of all, the difference between a position and a classification. And I'll just use the fire chief as an example. Hypothetically, there might be 3 positions in the classification of fire engineer. There's only 1 position in the classification of fire chief. So you can have multi-position classifications, you can have single-position classifications. The only time we put multiple positions in the same classification is when all the duties are similar enough that any one applicant with a given set of knowledge, skills, and abilities could do any of those jobs. If a job requires a substantially different knowledge or skill or ability, it goes in a different classification. The class specification, as I said, is similar to a job description. The difference is a job description describes a single position. So essentially the questionnaires the employees did were their job description. We take those and turn them into the class specification, which is a little bit broader, a little bit more formalized, and covers all the positions in the classification. The most important distinction here, very important, is the difference between employee and position. The classification plan is a position classification plan, not an employee classification plan. What that means is we're studying jobs, not people. The classification plan should be accurate as people come and go because it represents the work that the town has to be done, not the person who happened to be doing that work at the time of the study. We can classify a vacant position, and did in several situations where they were vacant for the town. As long as the supervisor tells us the duties, we can classify that job. Questions about that one?
Did you find any class specifications where you had somebody that you had classified to do this job and they were doing 3 jobs? And did you find in the same classification that you classified somebody that was supposed to be doing 3 jobs and they were doing 1?
I don't think we found that. Now, you have a number of jobs where people are doing what would be multiple jobs somewhere else. But I think, for example, in your public work specialists are doing both distribution collection and they're doing streets and ground maintenance and building maintenance and asphalt patching and the things that would typically be in public works. And a lot of places have those separate, you have them combined. So when we look at those jobs, part of what we do is recognize that they have a lot more variety, and therefore it's a little bit stronger than the job that's just doing utilities or just doing public works. Did that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I have a question. So when the employees did their interview or survey and gave you their job, what they were actually doing, did you all look at what that employee wrote down versus the actual job description that the town had?
We actually don't pay a lot of attention to previous job descriptions. We sort of start with a blank slate and we say, here's what's going on right now. We don't go back off. I mean, I have it in my head just because I've done it in the past. So I have a comparison. But typically what we're trying, because we know things change, we're trying to get it up to date. So we're trying to reflect what's going on now. And you can almost think of a study like this as a snapshot in time. In 6 months, something else will have changed.
And did you find that some of the things that the employees said they were doing was because of like staff shortages? It's not really, their job is that the job just needs to be done, but they don't have anyone to do it. Did you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, for example, you have finance and clerk right now. We separated those for the purpose of, in the future, you have separate job descriptions. Yeah, I mean, that's a lot for one person. Yes.
In companies now.
Yes.
So another question too, when you take into consideration equity, just say an employee has a college degree, but that job doesn't require one. Is that pretty much, part of salary, or how do you all look at that part?
So that's actually on this next slide.
Because I know, okay.
And where we talk about employee qualifications. Because what we are looking at is what does that job require. And so, if you have somebody that has a college degree, it's not required. Hopefully that means they're doing a better job, and that might be captured in merit pay. But we actually put the job with the market based on what the job requires. Did that answer your question? So let me walk you through some of the things that are most frequently misunderstood about classification. These are not factors that go into determining which jobs are at the same classification, which are at different classifications. Now, this is on the classification side of the coin. Some of these come back into play on the pay side of the coin, and I'll talk about that too. So let me start with volume of work, and let me give you a hypothetical example. I know y'all are much more advanced in your technology now in your meter reading, but I'm going to use an old-fashioned example. Let's say hypothetically the town had 3 water meter readers. And let's say hypothetically one of those meter readers averages reading 500 meters a day. The second one averages 600 meters a day, and the third one averages 700 meters a day, different volumes of work. Now, when we look at those 3 positions to determine, do they go in the same classification level or different classification levels, what we're looking at is, are the duties the same or are the duties different? So if, hypothetically, all 3 of those meter readers have the duty of reading residential water meters, then the duties are the same, the classification's the same, the salary range is the same. Now, the difference between 500 meters a day and 700 meters a day might be that the one reading 700 meters a day is doing a better job, more productive, more efficient. That would be performance evaluation and merit or performance pay, a different part of the compensation system. The difference might be that the one reading 500 meters a day is just reading in a part of town where the houses are spaced out further, just takes longer, not a classification factor. On the other hand, if one of those meter readers is reading residential water meters, the second one is reading, repairing, replacing, and testing meters. The third one is reading, repairing, replacing, test meters, and operates the backhoe when there's a water line break. Then you've got 3 different sets of duties and 3 different classifications. Is that making sense for everybody? Questions?
Yeah, but if all 3 of them have the same classification and you find out they're all doing the very same job, at what point do y'all ever come up and say, look, you've got 3 meter readers and you don't need but 2?
If that were the case, yes, sometimes we do. We actually have a...
Do y'all do that in these classifications?
That's identifying staffing levels is not what you ask us to do in this study. But we also do a management section where if we see something that's, really kind of sticking out, we make you aware of it. But that we didn't study that per se.
Yeah. But if we ask you to study that, do y'all do it? Or no? Yes or no? We haven't recently. So I honestly don't know if the methodology has changed. It's probably been 7 or 8 years since we've done one of those. So the second one up there is length of service, and that's the person. We're looking at the job, not the person. So again, if you've got 3 police officers
One's been with the town for 6 months, one's been here 5 years, one's been here 15 years. Again, if the duties are the same, the classification's the same, the salary range is the same. Hopefully, when you get to the pay side of the coin, you would see them at 3 different places within that salary range because of different lengths of service. Employee qualifications, and again, this one gets interesting because in classification, what we're looking at is not what the qualifications the person has, but rather what are the qualifications the job requires. One example of that, I actually worked in the HR department in Chapel Hill before I went to Cary as their HR director. We were doing a study of our bus drivers, had about 50 bus drivers at the time, and believe it or not, 2 of them were attorneys. They finished law school at Carolina, they passed the bar, hadn't yet found a job as a lawyer, so they were driving buses, which was how they put themselves through law school. So who thinks you should be a bus driver with a law degree differently than the other bus drivers?
You've got one, don't you? Yeah, I think you should.
Usually, the attorney in the room is the only one who wants to take that position. And then finally, employee work performance is the person. We're looking at the job, not the person. We don't know, as we do this, who's doing a wonderful job. We don't know if somebody's in trouble. Has nothing to do with what we're doing. I was doing a study sometime back for a really small town. This was a town with only 9 employees, no manager. They had 3 employees that reported to the finance commissioner, 3 reported to the police commissioner, and 3 reported to the public works commissioner. And I passed out the recommendations, which I'll be doing shortly with you. We got to one particular page, and one of the board members just blurted out, "We can't pay this person this much." And I said, "Well, what's the problem?" And he said, "Well, he's doing a lousy job. We're getting ready to fire him." And this was a public meeting. And I said, "Well, you know, if you've told him what he needs to do to improve and you've given him a chance to improve and you've, been through your disciplinary processes and he's not doing the job, you do have to deal with that person appropriately, but you still want to classify the job accurately, put it in a competitive salary range. So if you fire somebody who's doing a bad job, you'll have a competitive enough range to hire somebody who can do a good job. Sometimes we don't get the level of competence we need because we aren't paying what we need to get it." So any questions on that one? So these are the factors we do use in determining which jobs are at the same classification level, which are at different classification levels. That first one is mental difficulty. How hard are the problems that have to be solved in the job? Complexity. How many steps does somebody have to go through to complete a task, and they get it done in 3 steps? So it take them 33 steps to get through something. Variety of work. How many different kinds of things does somebody have to be able to do? Is it just meters? Is it meters and make water taps? Is it meters, make water taps, and patch asphalt? All of those things come into play. Public contact. Who does this person represent the town to? Are they just dealing with coworkers, or do they represent the town to the public? And if so, what are they doing? Are they giving out information on behalf of the town? Are they solving problems or complaints? Are they enforcing laws or codes? Are they negotiating contracts on behalf of the town? Education and experience, and again, that's what does the job require. Work environment and hazards. Is this somebody who has to go out at 2 o'clock in the morning when it's 10 degrees outside, deal with dangerous people, dangerous situations? Physical effort, we look at the frequency, intensity, and duration of the physical effort required. Does the job have supervisory responsibility? And if so, at what level of authority? And then is this an employee who's with the supervisor most of the time? The supervisor monitors closely, or does the employee have more independence, make his or her own decisions, and catch and correct his or her own mistakes? Any questions on that one? So I want to turn back to the pay side of the coin and talk just a little bit about how what we're doing in this study fits into your overall compensation system. So compensation systems, whether it's public sector or private sector, have 4 primary components. Now, they get combined in different ways in different organizations, but it's like a 4-legged table. If one of the legs is missing, it puts stress on the others, and the table's not as stable. So each of these has a separate purpose, and I want to walk you through each one. The first one is the major focus of the study. updating your classifications and your salary ranges. And where we find jobs that are under market, we do recommend adjustments. We call them catch-ups. They're not really raises, because what you're doing is catching people up to where they should be already. Questions on that one? The second of the four is typically called a cost of living adjustment. Compensation professionals call it a market adjustment, because what you're doing is you're moving your pay table up in between studies to reflect market changes. Usually looking at the national rate of inflation, or CPI, but also the local economy, because the local economy could be stronger or weaker than the national economy. And what this does is it moves the hiring rate, hopefully, pretty much each year, and the maximum, so the ranges are staying up with market, looking at what your competitors are doing as well. If the town did not do this, and your competitors do, then what would happen is over time, their starting salaries would be going up. If yours were staying the same, it would get to the point you could only hire people nobody else wanted, which obviously is not where you want to be. The other important piece of this is keeping down the cost of turnover. Turnover is very expensive. According to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, when the town loses an employee, the cost to the town is anywhere between 75% of that employee's annual salary and 125% of that employee's annual salary. And the town has a number of jobs in that 100 to 125% range, where it is very expensive to get, first of all, recruit, get somebody back on board. There's a learning curve. They're not really earning their salary for the first while. You've got a lot of training that has to go on before they're up to speed. Questions on that one? The third of the four is that once you have your pay ranges established, there needs to be some method of moving employees across that range. Now, there's no one right or wrong way to do this, but most local governments do it based on performance. They say if we've got two employees, one's doing a better job, we want the one doing a better job to be making getting larger increases or making more money. And the trend around the state has been to put more resources into performance pay, less into automatic kinds of increases, and to have a up-to-date, valid, well-accepted performance evaluation system that forms the basis for that, and to have your supervisors trained to use it. Questions on that one?
The study that you did, does that provide some kind of plan for something like that in process? Because historically here, we've not done any kind of performance pay.
We do merit.
You do merit? Cool.
It depends. Sometimes we've done both. Sometimes we've done COLA. Sometimes we've done just merit. So.
And then the final of the four pieces is longevity pay. The longevity says, thank you for sticking with us. We appreciate your loyalty. Usually awarded in lump sum amounts, usually sometime around late November or early December, so it kind of doubles as a Christmas bonus, traditionally in North Carolina. Questions about that one? So I want to back up and just illustrate a little bit how all of this is intended to work. Yes, I'm live. So the way the pay table is set up, you have pay grades that go down the page like this. You have a range with a hiring rate. Whoops, bound to lose it here. Sorry about that. A hiring range, a minimum, and when an employee comes in at the hiring rate, they move to minimum when they pass probation, a midpoint, and a max. And the way this is intended to work is that the grades going down the page are intended to represent the job. So I'm just going to use the police department as an example. I think their rank structure just makes it easy to follow. So we'll say hypothetically grade 11's a police officer, grade 13's a detective, grade 15's a sergeant, and I'm just going to stick some round numbers up here for illustration. Don't read anything into these. So we'll just say hypothetically, this goes from 40 to 60,000. We'll say this goes from 45 to 70,000. So when we say that the grade and the job go together, what that means is if I'm a police, it would be, first of all police officers would be in that grade. And if I'm a police officer and get to the top of my grade, I can't just go down to the next grade. That represents the maximum value in the market for that job. That's what keeps the town from overpaying and having that $85,000 administrative assistant 25 years ago. So the only way my grade changes is if my job changes. So if I'm a police officer and get promoted to detective, I go to the grade for detective. If I'm a detective and mess up and get demoted back to police officer, I go to the grade for police officer. A study like this could say, well, really, what's on the market? Police officers should be in grade 12, detectives should be in 14, sergeants should be in grade 15. If you approve that, then all police officers move. The grade and the job stay together. The range then going across is where the person comes in. So you've got job this way, person this way. So let's say hypothetically, the chief has hired 2 new police officers today. Let's say hypothetically, one of them is coming straight out of basic law enforcement training, no previous experience. The other one has been a police officer in Berlin for 2 years. And they're both going to be police officers, so they're going in the same grade, but you have a difference in the qualifications of the 2 people. So the way this is intended to work is that you would start the one with no previous experience here, the one with previous experience somewhere above that. Then, once they're on board, you need to have some method of moving across that range, that third item. Okay. If that method's performance, then what that means is that periodically, each employee is considered as to whether or how much of an increase he or she has earned. Now, there is a seniority component to merit or performance pay, because the longer somebody's here, the more opportunities they have to earn an increase across the range. The performance component is the better job somebody does, the larger and or more frequently increases and the faster they move across the range. So the kind of distribution you expect to see when you've had this in place is you expect to see long-term, high-performance employees, been here a long time doing a really good job in the top parts of the pay plan. You expect to see middle-term high performers and long-term middle performers in the middle parts of the pay plan. And you expect to see brand new folks and some longer-term folks who are doing enough to keep their job, but not a whole lot more, in the beginning parts of the pay plan. Questions? Am I making sense so far? When there's market adjustment or COLA, the whole range changes. So, for example, hypothetically, if you did a 2%, this would change by 2%. This would change by 2%. Everything on the whole table changes by whatever that amount is. And part of what we provide to the town is a linked spreadsheet that allows you to do this. Now, what y'all have asked us to do in the study primarily is this part right here. What is the proper classification for each job, and what is a competitive salary range for that job? And what we've done is create a new pay table to reflect that. But then we have to get every employee onto this new pay table in the proper grade that goes with his or her job. Every employee, every job's going to be listed, and every employee's got to be in one of these pay ranges. And in doing that, we calculate something we call a compression analysis. And what that means is we take all the employees and all the jobs and all the grades, and we collapse them together, and we do bar charts. How many employees are at the very beginning of their range? Bar. How many are 5% into the range? Bar. How many are 10% into the range? Bar, and so on. And if you look at that bar chart and draw a line across the top of those bars, what you hope to see is something that looks sort of like a bell-shaped curve. The ideal distribution of employees across the range in a long-term stable organization is to have approximately 2/3 of all employees in the middle 1/3 of the pay. That's ideal. Unfortunately, sometimes instead of that bell-shaped curve, we see something that looks more like a ski slope, and that's called compression. And what compression means is that most employees are in the very beginning parts of the range. You've got high bar charts here and then lower. And if an organization has compression, there are two associated problems. The first one is a hiring problem. Because let's say you've got a really well-qualified candidate you want to hire. To get them, you need to pay them right here, but your on-board equally qualified folks are back here. You got a problem. Second problem is a morale issue. Because instead of having long-term high performers over there and brand-new folks here, they're very close together. And that can create dissatisfaction and morale problems and that expensive turnover that we were talking about earlier. So in our business, we consider law enforcement kind of the canaries in the mine shaft because they're usually the ones that squawk first and the loudest when the pay is an issue. And I think part of that is because what happens is you have all the different law enforcement agencies in a county going to court and sometimes having to hang out a little bit, waiting to be called to testify, and they sit around and talk. And so it's like, well, how long have you been where you are? Well, how long have you been where you are? Well, what did you start out at making? And sometimes the starting pay is not that different. And then the question becomes, well, what are you making now? And so we've got one that's gotten this far, and one that's gotten this far, and one that's gotten this far, and so on, and everybody wants to go to work here. So when we talk about competitive, it's two-dimensional. It's competitive at the beginning, so you can hire people, and it's competitive in the actual salaries people are making, so you can keep people. And that's what we mean by the two different dimensions. Questions? Okay, let's pass it. Oops, backwards. Okay, good. Has Mayor got one? Okay. So I'm going to just walk you through this, and please stop me at any point where you have questions. So there's a cover letter, and then a cover page. Oh yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Sorry.
Is that better?
Yeah, and just pull that one too, so
everybody
can hear
Okay. So then you have a table of contents, and then there are 6 pages of org charts. The organization charts represent, as we understand it now, reporting relationships and recommended job titles. So some of the job titles are the same and some are different. But this is just kind of a snapshot picture of all of that. And then once you get past those 6 organization charts, there's a page right before the first blue tab on study methodology, which is what we've just kind of talked about. Go past that first blue tab, and from pages 3 all the way through page 14 is a narrative by department or function within the town, with basically a paragraph on each different classification. And in those paragraphs, we do a thumbnail sketch of the duties. If we recommended a different title, we say why. If your job is different than the market for some reason, we also say that. And that takes us over to page 16. So if you'll go to 16 behind that first blue tab, you'll see at the top of the page the towns that we surveyed. And you'll see they're all within a commutable distance. So they're all like intense competitors, even though some are larger, some are smaller. The percentages that you see there, like Apex 55, Clayton 80, Clinton 50, what that's reflecting is the difference between the starting and the maximum of the range. So if you look at like a range that goes from 40 to 60,000, 60 minus 40 is 20, 20 is half of 40, that's a 50% range. So we use this information, we survey the starting salary, and then we use this information to set the maximum salary. And so right now, Benson's at 55%. The market average was 58. We think 55 is still good, so we kept you there. At the bottom of that page, it talks about compression, and we've already talked about that. So going over to page 17, and let me walk you through the implementation strategy. First of all, it's a very conservative implementation strategy. It's based on blended service. So let me talk to you about what that means. And I'm going to go back over the chart for illustration here. So let's say you've got a police officer who's never been promoted. What we've done with this strategy is we've taken every employee to minimum plus 1.5% per year of service. If they've never been promoted, if it's a police officer that's never been promoted, then we go minimum, and if they've been here 5 years, 5 times 1.5 is 7.5, we go to minimum plus 7.5%. And that's where we place them. If they're already making that amount, there's no increase. If they're not making that amount, then we are moving them to that amount. So if the employee instead has been promoted to a detective, then we're taking the amount of time they've been with the town. Let's say, in this case, you've got somebody who's been with the town for 10 years, and they've been a detective for 4 years. We add those together, and then we divide in half to get 7. And we use 7 as that blended service and apply the 1.5 to that, which means they're going to go to the detective to the minimum plus 10.5% above that. The reason we do blended is if you've got somebody that's a detective and they've been with the town for 10 years, they haven't been a detective for 10 years. So it doesn't make sense to give them credit for all 10 years in the detective range. At the same time, you don't want to just give them credit for 4 years because they've been with the town longer than that. So this blends the two together, and we found that to be the fairest way to put people onto the pay plan. Have I said that clearly? Do you have questions about that? And that's kind of described there, and you'll see what that cost is. And then there's some important notes there. Turn this off again. There's some important notes there at the bottom of the page. The first is that everything in here is based on salary data from February. So effective July 1st, all these same people that we surveyed are going to do some kind of cost of living adjustment. So the town will also need to do that in order to stay competitive with the market. The second one is that the cost you see there is salary dollars only. It does not reflect the cost of benefits. The third one is that we recommend that the manager have some flexibility where if you've got an employee that's had discipline within the last year and they're really not currently earning their paycheck, that you can delay their catch-up until they get their performance up to par. Also, sometimes there are inadvertent issues in internal equity as a result of the implementation strategy. For example, we have no way of knowing, for example, if a police officer who's been with you for 4 years also had 5 years before they came here. We have no way of knowing that. And sometimes the implementation strategy can create some internal equity that the manager has to kind of massage a little bit to make it accurate. So we recommend you give her that flexibility. And then the last one just talks about how this does not take the place of COLA or promotional increases or merit or performance increases. This is a one-time catch-up to get people onto a competitive and accurate pay plan. So questions on any of that? On page 18, you can see that bar chart that I was talking about, and you'll see that you do have compression. Some of it is probably legitimate because you are growing, you've added some positions, and the new people legitimately would be in the beginning parts of the pay range. But this is a lot of compression. So partly what that means is you want to be as aggressive as you can in that merit program where you're moving people across the range. On page 19 is the actual pay table. And then on what you actually adopt are pages 20, 21, and 22. That's the actual pay plan itself that shows each job in the competitive salary ranges. Past that, starting on page 24, is the actual salary data. So you can see the data that we looked at and compare that. And as I said, once you've had time with this, if you have questions and want us to come back and answer questions, we're happy to do that. The next tab is the policy tab. And behind that, first of all, are those management recommendations that I mentioned. There's 3 pages there with just some of the things that we wanted to point out and recommend. Pages 4 and 5 is a benefits survey, so you can see how your benefits compare. And we did make a couple of recommendations there. One is if you look at page 4, it says benefits survey, Town of Benson. The second column from the right, the on-call compensation, y'all are currently paying somebody 4 hours a week to be on call. We did recommend increasing that to 7, partly for market, but also because you have small crews, the smaller the crew, the more often an employee has to be on call. So somewhere like Apex might have a crew of 10, and they're only on call 1 out of every 10 weeks. If you have a crew of 4, your folks are on call 1 out of every 4 weeks. That's basically 1/4 of somebody's life when they can't go out of town, have a glass of wine or beer at dinner. Somebody calls them up, wants to go fishing, they are limited. And 1/4 of the life is a fairly significant amount of time. So that's one of the reasons we recommend increasing that. Oh no, the other page is missing. Do y'all have a page 5? I don't know what happened. The printer must have eaten it. I apologize. Page 5 is comparison on your vacation and your longevity. And we did make some recommendations on both of those. And I will email that back tomorrow so y'all can get that. The longevity, we looked at, again, you'll see what all these same places are doing on longevity. And you'll see that yours is starting kind of low. And since it's kind of a Christmas bonus, we wanted to recommend, we actually recommended increasing it at the earlier stages, but leaving the max the same. So we didn't go up at the top, but we did go up some at the bottom. On vacation, because recruitment and competition is so intense right now, about half your market starts people with 12 vacation days a year. Y'all start people with 10 vacation days a year. We wanted to recommend you go to 12 just to you as competitive as possible. You know, when you're negotiating with an employee for, you know, police officer or whatever, and they've maybe got 2 more offers, you know, having at least the same amount of vacation can be useful. So that was a,
Well, I think we do.
you, okay,
I
so,
think Scott always gets confused with Christmas and Thanksgiving. Because
no,
they-
you're
they-
talking about holidays. I'm talking about vacation.
Yes, 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 I'm sorry.
I'm talking about vacation, yeah. So it's just starting them at 12, which is what about at least half your market's doing now already.
Where in here do you put that in, like, holidays? If Benson's given 25 days a year holidays, and Dunn is given 15, where does that,
So on page 4 there, back one more page, the other way. Go back the other way.
page?
Just behind that middle tab and page 4. And you'll see that very first, second column says holidays. And you can see what everybody else is doing and what you're doing. And how you compare. Is that answering your question?
Yes, ma'am, it does.
Okay.
Did not see that.
Since you're looking at so many different markets, and first time we kind of got the data from study on these markets, what are you seeing as far as time transfer from people in one municipality to another? We enacted a policy a couple months ago to give further ability to give up to 50% of their years of service. Is that kind of common across the board, or what do you see as far as that goes?
Everything. There is not a clear trend on that.
Okay.
I mean, I know some employers that give 100%. That's not many. There are probably, if I had to pick one sort of middle ground, it's not stated as a policy, but rather it's negotiated. That rather than, you know, having something in writing, it's the manager's given more flexibility to just negotiate. That's probably the most frequent thing we see. But we do see that more and more just because, you know, as I said earlier, I've been doing this for 45 years. This is the hottest market we've ever had in those 45 years.
Is there any recommendation or consideration where the number of years of service a person can retire, and if they're not at a certain age, we still paying their insurance every month? I know a lot of towns and municipalities quit that.
What we did in the personnel policy was keep your current policy. There's I'm trying to remember the name of the court case. Do you remember? There's a court case that says you can't take it away from people who are already vested,
Right.
but you can change it going forward. And I've actually seen the trend starting back when they first started requiring the calculation of the cost of that, the OPEB calculation. We saw a number of local governments start to cap that off with new employees. But in the last 2 or 3 years, we've actually seen people starting to put it back in place. So it's like the trend's like this. But we kept in your policy what you currently have in the new, and that's the next thing you have there is recommended new policy with some changes. The 2 that I mentioned in longevity and vacation accrual are in here. There's a couple of new court cases that are reflected in here. One's for something called a name clearing hearing that came out of a case out of Baldhead Island. And then there's one of the other things that we did recommend in the policy is that there's a trend to give people more time for funeral leave. Partly because, it used to be in North Carolina, most of your employees were home. But more and more, we've got people who are having to go out of state for funerals. And so the trend has been to give people a week instead of just 3 days for funeral leave, and we put that in. So those are just, some of it is just an updated language, just a little bit more modern language. But those are three of the changes that we've got in the new policy. And then the last thing, the last blue tab, is the actual class specifications or job descriptions. We are updating a number of those, and we haven't finished, so I just put some examples in here so you could see what they look like. These are updated, but we've got a ways to go to finish updating all those. And if there are some you especially want to see, let the manager know, and we'll certainly get those to you. And that was trying to go as fast as I could and cover everything reasonably well. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions you have while we're here and to come back with any additional questions.
I think it's been a while since we've done this. I think it was 7 years, 7 or 8 years.
And I'm not sure it was implemented when it was done before.
From what I understand.
It was not.
But,
10 years ago.
10 years, so 10 years.
The last one I did was 7.
No, yeah, it was 7.
So then you recommended doing this every 5 years. If we do it on a more regular basis, does it cost as much to do it every time, or because you have the data that recent, is it easier for you to come and update?
You know,
She's retired.
Erica will need to answer that question. But what I do want to make you aware of one option that really works well, and we've done this with Clayton for a number of years, Apex, Garner, even Hendersonville, places that are starting to grow. What we do is we put them on a 3 or 4 year cycle where we study a third or a fourth of the jobs every year. So like, for example, I wouldn't do anything next year, but maybe in 2 years, do either labor and trades, public safety, or everybody else. And then the next year do another one of those groups, and then the next year another group. It has 2 advantages when you do it that way. One is instead of the cost of implementing everybody at the same time, it spreads those implementation costs out. The second is what we find is when you only do a study every 5 to 7 we've had some clients it's been 12 years. When you're doing the study, employees are so anxious because they feel like it's the only chance they've got for years to come. And so if they know you're on a cycle and their job's going to be studying once every 3 or 4 years, it just lowers the temperature for everybody and gives them some sense of, that they care and they want to make sure we're up to date.
So if you go an option like that and do 25%, then the cost is 25% basically every other year for 4 times, right?
Well, if you did like a 4 year cycle, then yes, it would be 25% each year for us, and then the implementation would typically be a fourth of what it would be if you were doing the whole thing. Any other questions? If not, I thank you for the opportunity to work with you one more time, and wish you well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You did better than I thought you would.
I appreciate your
You're a
confidence.
star.
Turn up the battery on this.
Now we're going to go back to the agenda, and anyone wishing to address the board has to come forward and give your name and address. Anyone that wants to come and speak to the board, come forward. While nobody's coming, we'll close that and we'll go down to the department report. Does any of the commissioners have any questions of any of the folks that's in the department report?
Matt, Parks and Recreation, where are we on their playground?
Playground gets delivered on the 12th.
Come up to the podium.
Or don't.
I'm loud enough. I can stand back there. Playground, well, as you saw, the old playground's out. New playground gets delivered on the 12th, the week of the 12th. It's supposed to be installed that same week, and it's supposed to be incomplete before the same. Now, that's the last timeline I got. I haven't heard anything different since.
Are they gonna get the stumps up?
The trees are out, but the stumps need to be ground. I think he's ground some, but I don't think he's got them all ground out yet.
Why didn't you push them out of the ground?
I think you have to grind them. Because the root system under those stumps is huge. I mean, the root system will be like 75% of the tree.
8 feet down.
I took down 2 trees bigger than those, and the stumps are gone.
Push them down?
Go
So
straight
you have-
down.
Yours
You
was
have
oak
to
trees.
leave
These
a
are pine.
good
What's
long
that?
leg
His
to
was
push it.
oak trees, these were pine.
The root system on a tree can be up to 75% of the height of the tree, so those systems are wide. He's gonna have to grind, in my opinion, he's gonna have to grind them out. But as far as I know, we're right on schedule.
Okay, well,
Any
check
other
with them on
questions?
grinding because, they've got to a point, they ground 2 of them. You got like 7 more to be ground and nobody's shown up. Don't want the playground equipment to come and
Not be ready.
not be ready.
10-4? We'll give him a call tomorrow.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Is that it? I can stay up here if you guys want me to.
No.
Okay.
You can do all my stuff.
Unless you wanna speak for Wooten or somebody. Any other questions of the department reports? Now we go into a public hearing. Kimberly is gonna tell us about the systems development.
So in March, the Wooten Company came and presented you all with the systems development fee schedule. We have been in a public comment period, and that ended on May the 17th. My office was not asked any questions. I got no emails. I did have one developer ask for the fee schedule. I sent it to him, but didn't have any questions about what it was or what the process was. So we have to, part of procedural, we have to open up the public hearing to see if we have anybody come to the board with any questions. We are not asking for approval tonight. This will be approved when we approve the budget. So it'll all be implemented July 1.
Okay, we open the public hearing. Anyone that wants to come and speak relative to the subject of systems development fees, come forward. In favor. She's already spoken in favor. Anybody else wants to come and speak in favor? Anybody wants to come and speak against system development fees? Anyone that wants to come and speak against the system development fees? While nobody is coming, we close the public hearing, and you don't want to vote, has it already been voted on?
No, we're going to vote when we vote on the budget.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions of Kimberly? Anybody on the board? Now we're down to the ADA transition plan. Lynn, you going to talk?
Yes, sir.
You should just go right, yep.
There we go. All right, Mayor and Commissioners, as always, thank you for your time. Great to see you this evening. Here with a very brief update about completion and closeout of your ADA self-assessment and transition plan. If you recall, some members of our staff were here, I believe at the end of March, to present the finished product on this effort to you. I think the board collectively had a few questions about the duration of the compliance schedule and about the potential cost of implementation that went along with it. So that led you to table any action on the report that evening. Here tonight, hopefully to offer just a little bit of extra context and clarity on those. If we're able to do so, we'll close by asking for an action item on this. So don't want to belabor the why and the how behind this. I know you have seen quite a bit of it, but just very quickly, as a local government unit with 50 or more employees, you're required to complete this exercise as a requirement of the Americans with Disabilities Act. The guidance and the methodology we use to do so is fairly formulaic, I would say. It's pretty well defined. There's a couple of very clear steps in it. Included in that is a facilities assessment, where we specifically go around facilities around town looking for any potential barriers to access to folks with disabilities. Once we've identified those, the next component of the plan is to come up with a compliance schedule. And this is where we document your path forward for making recommended improvements needed to bring those assessed facilities into compliance. When we have that plan, the two critical components are it must be fiscally constrained, and it's typically phased over a 5 to 10 year planning window. I think this was the crux of the questions last time. At the request of the board, we have revised the report to reflect a 10-year planning window of implementation as opposed to a 5-year window. I think we have also been able to add a little bit of additional context or clarity in terms of the potential cost associated with this implementation. And so recognizing that the vast majority of items on this list are likely very simplistic in nature, they're likely items that fall well below level of, say, a capital expenditure. These are items that can most likely easily be completed by town staff. So rather than try to assign an individual line item cost to each of these, we've tried to break out or sort of quantify more as a relative range the cost associated with each of these. So as you see there, under $1,000, maybe $1,000 to $5,000 range, and so on. And again, the vast majority of items on this list fall in probably either that first or second range. Included with my monthly report to you tonight, there's an extended excerpt of this, so you can take a little bit deeper look at it. But we have provided this revised documentation to town staff, and I believe they have offered their concurrence on it as well. So one other item I did want to touch on. I know curb ramps were also a topic of discussion last time, I think, when we presented something on the order of 100+ failed curb ramps. That was a bit of a surprise. Again, we've gone back and added a little bit more granularity or a little bit more context to this to show that the majority of those facilities don't require wholesale replacement. The majority of repairs needed there are things like evening up an uneven landing surface, adding tactile surfaces, etc. So again, 2/3 or more of these are not wholesale replacements. They're more intermediate repairs. So with that, I'm going to hit pause there for just a moment and ask if there's any questions.
Glenn, did you prioritize anything like they did with paving, say this should be taken care of in the next 6 months to a year versus some of the others?
There was some prioritization given to, I'll say, the criticality or the volume of use of certain facilities. With respect to the curb ramps, no, sir. Now, I will say those aren't buried in the larger compliance schedule. We've held them aside so that they're easily identified. Those are the kind of things that I think, again, makes sense to probably roll them into larger capital endeavors, whether that's a phased, an annual phased improvements effort towards those landing ramps, or if it's part of some of the larger, again, capital endeavors, street improvements, utilities improvements, et cetera, that you have going on around town.
What of these, I know it was mentioned at one time on the state maintained roads 301 and 50, that the state or DOT may pick up some of the cost of some of these. Yes or no?
That's on the new, we're going to talk about that in the new business.
Okay. Well,
I mean, we turned in, I think it was 11 curb ramps, and they're giving us an 80-20 grant. So
Okay.
they pay 80, we pay 20.
cool.
Yep.
So Main Street and Dunn, between McClams and McDonald's, are at the top of that.
We listed East Church in North Market, East Church in North Johnston, East Church and North Dunn, East Church and North Railroad, East Parish and South Lee, East Parish and South Elm, East Parish and Gilbert, East Parish and Southeast Railroad, West Parish and Southwest Railroad, South Lee and East Harnett, East Hill and North Johnston, East Hill and North Lee, and East Hill and North Elm.
So Main and Dunn are not on there. And that's the worst one we've got.
Well, you've got,
Right there at Dunn Street, McLean's vacant lot, and McDonald's
That would
coming
be
off.
DOT.
That-
What you just mentioned won't DOT.
yeah, these are, I mean, these are town-owned, yeah. DOT's gonna help us pay for town-owned.
Okay, but DOT has got that listed.
I will check. I will check. That's the one we've been putting,
Yeah, we've been putting
fillings
those
in, yeah.
There's no ramp there, there's a sidewalk, but there's no sidewalk in front of McDonald's. Don't know that they need one, but people cannot. A lot of people use that, and a lot of people run over it.
That is, if I'm not mistaken, that is listed in the, with the I-95.
Yeah.
It's supposed to, that's that betterment that we're doing, so it's supposed to carry down. Because we've got to fix that piping underground. So, that, isn't that right? It's in
But
there?
that's off
Yeah.
the grant, that's off the grant that we didn't get.
That's on the 95 widening project. We're paying additional for a betterment project in that we approved when Matt was here. Yeah,
We're gonna talk about that.
tonight?
No,
Okay.
June the 12th.
Okay. Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
make a note.
So that is on the plan to be fixed.
Good.
Yeah.
I think the biggest reason we put this off was to change the 5 years to the 10 years, because we didn't want to adopt a plan that we didn't think we would be able to finance in 5 years.
Correct.
Now that we have numbers, you feel confident that we can meet this in 10 years?
Well, and keep in mind, it doesn't have to be completed in 10 years. You have to make a good faith effort that we're doing it. So, but it doesn't have to be done in 10 years.
This ain't all of it, as
Huh?
far as the ADA, because the report I read was mainly for like the,
Well, that's what I was gonna ask him is.
because this ain't like the
see
buildings and everything like that.
Well, it was
Like,
public
in the-
spaces.
In the
So,
future,
I think to Mrs. Pickett's point, first and foremost, the goal here is intent. Like any capital improvements planning type document, this is intended to be a living document. It will change continually. It will require regular updates. As certain items are completed, those items will fall off. You know, you've also adopted a grievance procedure to go along with this, so new findings will come about. Things will get added to that list over time, and so I wouldn't necessarily look at this as though 10 years from now, that's the end of
I'm
this.
sure
This is
you'll
an
find more stuff.
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll find more.
This will be an ongoing effort, you know, for some time to come. But again, the beauty of it is the lion's share of them are relatively small ticket items. These are things that can easily be done at the staff level throughout the course of any given day.
you happy?
Almost. I do have one extra housekeeping item for you. Town staff made a request that we also modify content of the report to reflect Jay Murray as the project coordinator and Mrs. Pickett as the project administrator. So we have made those changes as well in the final report.
Don't we have that on?
It was me for both, but since Jay's on and he's doing it, we switched it.
He's talking about, I gave him the new one
Oh.
to be approved, so we could tag it on with that. Yeah, you have everybody should have one, the new, it's gonna be, the revised ADA section 504 policy statement. It's just where we're taking Ken and we're adding Jay on there. It was approved back, I think, in
September 13th of last year,
Right.
you approved your
So
initial
we
policy
just need
statement.
to approve it, cause we're changing from Ken to Jay.
So
So we just need to make sure that's in the motion.
happy to entertain any additional questions on this. If there are none, I think our request would be for a motion to accept the revised report as presented to staff, as well as the accompanying revised ADA policy statement.
Is Bob still involved with this too?
Yes, sir.
Bob's still involved with it?
Yes, sir.
It's in good hands.
I can't
Make that motion.
You ready for a motion, Mayor?
Yes.
I make the motion, we approve the ADA assessment transition plan with the update to add Mr. Murray as the contact instead of Ms. Pickett.
Is there any other questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you. This will close out that effort. Last portion of this for us will be to bundle the finished product and send it off to Ms. Council with the state of North Carolina for their concurrence.
That sounds good. Thanks for all your help.
Thank you.
Thank you, Clint.
Okay, under new business, consider approval of mural on Jim. Kim Pickett.
So we came to the board a couple of months ago, and we needed, the art board needed a new project for a mural, and we thought with the VS Fieldhouse being complete, we could tie the gym in to that. So we put them out for people to turn in applications. And the art board met last week, and we ultimately have decided on this. The muralist is Zachary Bender. He is actually from Benson, but he lives in Raleigh now. He gave a short summary of the mural. The mural that I propose is one based off the spirit of sport and its ability to inspire kids to pursue their goals and ambitions. I will accomplish this by telling a story as a young girl seeing a basketball player hit a shot at the buzzer as she falls in love with basketball. Sport can also breed community as shown with runners. It gives us all a time to shine so we can build self-confidence as shown with the soccer player. All eyes are on them as they are setting up to kick the setting up the kick to win the game. I grew up in Benson, playing Pop Warner football and basketball for my entire childhood. I have a deep love of sports and of my hometown. To be able to use my art and give back to the community that helped raise me would be both an honor and a privilege. So this is his work. We did ask him to do a couple adjustments, which are noted in here, but honestly, we were all blown away by this. The cost is $20,000, but it is going to be paid through occupancy tax. So it's already in Donna's budget to have this come out of that. So no cost to the town. And we just need approval.
I make a motion to approve.
Matt, were you involved with this as it was going along?
I've seen it, and I did ask my opinion on what I wanted and what I thought.
Is this your opinion?
This is, I said we need something recreation oriented, athletic oriented, yes.
Okay. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
No, but I mean, I couldn't.
You got one on the floor. Max,
I
make
make
a
a
motion.
motion we approve.
I'll entertain, okay. Say it again.
I make a motion we approve it.
Any other questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right,
Mr. Mayor, while we're on this topic, since we're doing all this, I would just like to say if there's any way possible we could find any funds this year to redo that parking lot. Since we've got a really nice ballpark now, and we're gonna have a really nice mural, I'd hate for people to have to walk through the mud to see it.
We
If
will
there's any way
look.
we could find some funding, that
Can
would be
we
great.
use any of the occupancy tax money to pave the parking lot?
No, you can't use that for paving.
Are we gonna run out of occupancy tax money with some of the stuff that we're using it?
No,
Okay.
no.
Do we need to look at the drainage first?
We do.
Go-
We do.
I know
We've
we
got to
talked
look
about it
at,
last month
yes.
about getting an estimate.
We got to look at drainage, and Jay actually has done a rough estimate of the cost of asphalt out there, and it was about $80,000, but that didn't include the drainage. So we're looking into it. Jay, that's on one of Jay's items. So we'll look for funding in the process as well.
Kim, that's on the agenda for the 13th too,
Okay.
because we had
Jerry's working on it too.
leftover somewhere, and I will try to get them.
Mike said something about the mural done in the parking lot to cover up.
They only pay for paint.
Paint over it.
Are you finished?
I'm finished with that one, yes, sir.
I'll entertain a motion.
Oh, that's already,
We're already done.
they've done
We're
it.
moving
Done
on.
it.
We're moving on.
We're good.
I make a motion, we approve.
Consider approval of updating the pedestrian curb ramp, ADA standard.
No, rear facade. B, rear facade. Okay.
New business item B. Mayor.
Item B.
I'm go,
Yeah.
okay.
Done it.
No, we didn't do that
C
one.
now.
We didn't do B. We did A.
Just did the mural, we hadn't done the
Freedom Temple Church.
Yeah, the back of the church.
Oh, okay.
Hey.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
okay.
Okay, so
Consider approval of rear facade grant, Freedom Temple Church, Maine.
if you've all seen the work going on behind Cornerstone and Salvaged Heirlooms and Temple Baptist, you'll see that they are working, CP Turnage has been working on cleaning up back there, fixing some issues as far as like access, the stairs, filling in some holes where some animals have started burrowing in. So they've really been working on it. This is all going to tie into the alleyway project that we got grant funds from Electricities to do, as well as grant funds from our occupancy tax. So she has submitted, Ms. Carolyn Reeves, for Freedom. She owns the Freedom Temple building. She has submitted for a rear facade grant. It's $1,500 match. She has spent well over that. And so we are recommending approval of this. It'll come out of economic development funds.
That's fine, but how about the front of it?
Well, she can come back and do the front later, but we asked for them to do this for the alleyway project.
It looks good, but, okay.
I mean, she's eligible for that as well, if she wanted to do it.
Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it. All right, consider approval of updating the pedestrian curb ADA standard utilizing DOT tax.
All righty. So, a few months back, we had an opportunity to submit some curb ramps that needed to be redone to fit ADA compliance. DOT has come back and approved. It is an 80-20 match. The total project is $174,800. The town's match is $34,960. We recommend to take that out of the money we have set back for PAL bill funding, because you can use that for sidewalk repairs. And as soon as I sign this DocuSign agreement, they will put it on their agenda to start the work. So
You need a motion?
I do, so I can sign it.
Motion.
Well, wait a minute.
Okay.
Now what we're talking about here is what DOT did a few years ago that didn't meet the standard. Is that correct?
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm sorry.
I thought this was the same thing as the pedestrian walks off the sidewalk.
It's to make them ADA compliant.
Yeah, but I asked the question, is that what we're going to spend money again on?
Yes.
And DOT's giving us
DOT's actually going to do the work.
80%.
And they're giving us 80%, yes.
Now, I had a talk with Sam last week about what they had promised to do on the walkways across the street.
On Main Street.
In other words, where as a crosswalk is going to be something different. But he got promoted, so now we're going to have to deal with somebody else. But should we try to do those two things together?
No, this is.
And I think I can talk them into doing the other.
I would go ahead and do this. This is TAP funding. I'm not sure. I mean, Main Street is their street, so I mean that'll be something separate, in my opinion.
I'll entertain a motion to approve this.
I made that motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Consider the approval of resolution 234-2023, and I give everybody a nickel that figured out what the difference in those two is.
So we're again going after grant funding. The state has come down with different lead and copper requirements, and so there's different pots of money to go for, but each pot of money needs a resolution to approve us to go after it. So one pot is going to be for researching and figuring out where the needs are and setting a plan, and the other one is for that and construction. So we're still in the process of creating the application, so we just need approval on both resolutions so we have them, because we have to have intent by June the 15th.
Nobody got the nickel, but on 234, identify lines is on that one. On 235, remove the lines is on it.
Right, identify and then identify in construction.
I make a motion, we approve resolution 234, 223, 235,
All in favor, say aye.
2023.
Opposed, no. Consider approval of bulk wastewater agreement with Johnson County.
Okay. So this is, we already have an agreement with the county, but it expires in June 30th. So this is a new agreement with them. We did not want to carry the agreement over. We wanted a new agreement with the county, so we've gone back and forth with them several times. This is basically stating that they're going to continue to keep their 192, 160 gallons per day with the wastewater treatment plant for sewer capacity to come from Johnston County. They have also asked for an additional 7,840 gallons per day to equal 200,000 gallons per day. It's 10% of our capacity. On top of that, they've asked for a temporary 50,000 gallons per day to not exceed past the date of December 31st, 2025. And then after that, that'll go away and it'll go back to the 200,000 gallons. With that, 250 is 13% of our capacity. Currently, when the state measures our capacity, it's on calendar year. So we all know in 2020 we ran into, we were over 80%. We were in the 80-90 rule. We had to do a report. We had to do an EAA. We got out of that. When we did our numbers for 2022, we were at 52%. So we've gone down. So it shows more people were home during COVID. We had a lot more rain in that year, so everything kind of went up. But we've normalized back down. I talked to Brian today. Right now we're teeter-tottering in 2023 at 68%, but you've had a really wet first half of the year. You're about to hit some dry times, and so he feels like it'll normalize back down to the 50% range. So I'm saying all that to say what Johnston County's asking for is really just kind of like a drop in the bucket.
You said we're at 68%?
Right now, but we're halfway through and we've had a wet first half of the year. So
Well, see, I don't understand the numbers, because we've got a report that's run every month on water and sewer. And in the first 4 months of 2023, on the sewer, we used 665,760 gallons per day. That's what we got money for. And if you calculate those numbers and add the reserves that he says we've done, then we're well within 60%.
which is right.
But if we look at Four Oaks, they're getting almost their limit now.
Mm-hmm.
And you're saying they want 50,000 more.
They want an additional 7840, which they will likely use. They need another 50,000 because they need to Johnston County needs to be able to have a permit approved for Four Oaks on sewer capacity. But that build out is 5 years out. So they're not looking at even using that 50,000 gallons. They just need it on paper. Okay.
On paper, do you reckon that Johnson County could give us a little more toward their sewer?
Well, I'm getting there. Okay, so for the additional 7,840 gallons per day, the county is going to have to give us a one-time fee based off of our system development fees that we just did. Could not have come at a better time. A one-time payment of $88,131.40. That's just for us to hold that capacity. Okay? And then they pay us monthly for usage, and we are going to charge them a total of $4.26 per 1,000 gallons, which is an increase from what we've charged them in the past, which is another reason why we wanted to do another contract, because we needed to change that cost. So currently, we have 2 lines that the county sends to us. We have a line from Meadow, and we have a line from Four Oaks. The line from Meadow is 404. The line from Four Oaks is 317 per 1,000 gallons. So we're going to change that to $1.11 per 1,000 gallons for transmission and $3.15 per 1,000 gallons for treatment, which totals the $4.26. So with the implementation of this contract, we get the they have to give us the $88,000 for capacity, which we will put likely into the wastewater treatment plant upgrade, because system development fees have to go into betterment of the system, and then they'll charge us, we'll charge them a monthly rate for the sewer capacity coming in based off the meter readings that we get.
Are we breaking even at the new rate?
Yes, we are.
Have we been breaking even?
I would say probably not. I would say probably not.
I just don't want to lose it on it next year.
Well,
Yeah.
if you look at the budget statement right now, we're 300 and some thousand in the hole, so it's got to grow.
Well, maybe we could charge them 300 and something thousand instead of 88.
So this will be hopefully approved by you all tonight, and then it will go on to the county's, I believe Chandra said the June 16th agenda for the county's approval to begin July 1.
Have you seen this?
I have,
Yes.
You agree with it?
I got no problem with it if it's 30 years long, just so you know.
I tell you,
30.
We're at the same rate for the next 30
No,
years?
you charge them.
We
for
can change the
regular
rate.
But you're obligated to give them that 200 for 30 years. And you have to give them 2 years' notice if you want to cancel after that.
no, we don't
So,
absolutely.
run the numbers by me one more time. You said we're currently at 68% capacity.
Yes.
And
But
that's-
but that's this year, and it's been a wet beginning of the year. It will dry out, so he feels like it will normalize back down.
But we're also fixing to hit hurricane season, and we know what happens around here during hurricane season, right?
There was 3 different ones.
So does
We
that-
did 3 different amendments on the last
We
one.
may hit 3 to 5 inches of rain this weekend.
That's what, and so,
If you listen
but
to the weather.
68% is including what we're already allotted for the county, right? Or is
Yes.
that's
That
what-
is included.
So
Yes,
the
that's
in-
already in there.
Okay. So
The-
we're not
the
adding
190
we're not adding 13% to 68, because that puts us at 80.
No,
We're
you're
just
not.
adding the difference.
Right, you're adding the 78 and then the additional 50,000 for 5 years.
But one thing you got to remember is that a lot of work was done on the I&I last year.
Mhm.
Spent a lot of money to get that done. And I can show you on the charts that I've got, that once they did that, the number went down fairly dramatically. And we were operating in the 50s, the high 50s. And the numbers in 2021 were high. The numbers in 2022 were low. But the numbers so far in 2023 are higher than the numbers in 2021. But we still have more wastewater going to the Neuse River than we have sewer coming to us. So we've still got some I&I, but I don't think we've got that much, because it was a big difference. But this contract, I think, runs out on July 20th. I think is the date on it. I don't have it with me, but
Yeah.
I would really like to have Ike take a look at this thing, and I haven't seen it, because we got it when we got here.
I've looked at it. The only concern I have is it's 30 years.
Well, look at it close, because they're gonna try to stick us down the road, and we wanna make sure that we're covered in this contract, that we don't get stuck for 30 years.
How does this affect us if the regionalization plan goes through for water and sewer?
I think you've got a long time before that
We
happens.
met on that.
Well, we got 30 years.
Well, that's true. That's true. I mean, keep in mind too, in the process of this, we are upgrading our plant to 3.75. And one note, because we've done the EAA, we can get up to 90% before this state comes back and says no more permits. So we've got a little leverage too, because we have the EAA in place and we're working on upgrading the plant.
And
So
the new
with all the stuff
Go
that's
ahead.
been approved, all the houses, the subdivisions, is that being factored in with what our percentage is right now?
It should be, yes, sir. Yes,
Reserved for.
yes.
This is
And we
I'm
still
scared
don't
I'm
know.
going to a bad place, but in the growth you see coming in 5 years, that we can just guess that. I understand that. It's just a guess. Are we still going to be covered with who it is? Are we gonna
From
be-
what we're seeing, yeah, I mean, residential wise, absolutely, I think we're covered because it's such a small percentage.
Not really residential.
You're talking industrial. It just depends on what comes, right? Like and that's the thing, like Cross Point, we haven't really been told what's going there. So we've based it off of a calculation and we're okay. But if they bring in a manufacturing facility, then we're gonna have to redo some numbers. But, I mean, you don't know what's coming yet, but
This might be the dumbest thing you've heard me say yet. Is it possible to have it where we give them the capacity, but put a catch in there? If we reach 85% or some number, then that's all.
I think we can, yeah, yeah.
If they don't agree to it, they can get somewhere else.
Dump it somewhere else.
And my suggestion would be, if we're gonna do that, then let's say that's what, I mean, because Ike has looked at it.
I got no problem.
He had it, I mean, a month ago. If you recall, Mayor Medlin, I did send it to you as well, because we had a conversation through email about it with Brian and Ike. But my suggestion would be to approve it based off of these caveats that y'all want, because we are running into a shorter window. And it took the county a while to get it to me as well. And then we had to get the numbers to put into it.
Who came up with 30 years?
What was the term on the
The
last
county.
contract?
There were several.
We had several amendments on the last one.
Frankenstein set of contracts that done it in 99 and 05. It's listed in there. But there were some, one was 10, I think one was 5. I think they're all in.
It was written in 2008, and it's been automatically renewed every year because it was written in the contract that way. But that's what I'm saying. This contract has got to be to our liking. And I know they'd like to have it tomorrow, but I really think we've got a few days till the 13th of whenever we have the next meeting in June. But I'd like to see the thing cleaned up before we do it.
Okay.
I think we're in good shape with sewer for the next 3 years. And I have spent enough time on this, unless there's a disaster. And we don't know how to handle that yet.
Three years, though, is really no time. It's a blink of the eye. And we have got two manufacturing, we've got two new buildings that one of them, we do not know what's going in. And I just don't want to come up and they say, okay, we have got so-and-so company and we're going to be doing manufacturing and that's going to up our sewer rate or up our sewer
Capacity.
usage, and then we're out.
So if y'all don't mind, then tell me and Ike how you want us to amend this. I mean, do we want that roll-off period if we get to a certain percent? And what is that percent? What do you want it to be?
Do you
Like
know
said.
what percentage that, I mean, or is that something for Brian to answer, that at this point, we'd have to tell the county we can't. we're
90.
gonna stop?
90. Well, I mean, I would say 80. Because I think once you get to that point, you're probably, yeah.
Kim, what's the reason for the 30-year contract?
That's what the county gave us, yeah.
How long is our water contract with them, with the water that they supplies?
We're actually, I'd have to go back and look at how long it is, but we're actually trying to get them to amend that as well, because we need more capacity in water.
You talking about water with Dunn?
No, the county.
How long is our contract with the county for them to supply us water?
That's been amended a few times as well. Hadn't it, Ike?
I don't know if we have a contract.
We do,
No, we do. Yeah, we do.
we do.
88,000 looks good as an upfront payment, but we spent 58,000 last time we went over
Yeah,
80%.
that's
And so
true.
that's a wash. I don't want it, and with inflation, it'll probably be 90,000 if we do it again. I don't want to jump on a number.
I'd
So-
say something to consider that you wanna sell sewer treatment because you're gonna be spending a lot of money to expand the plant.
Yeah.
This is a big customer that you're gonna be servicing and getting fees from and an upfront amount, even more. But I think if they'll be willing to say, well, if you get in a bind and you can't service this anymore, then we understand. Now, I don't know what kind of notice that they'd want in such an event.
Yeah, because they'll have to,
Because they've worked a 2-year notice in here. I mean, keep in mind, this isn't something they could just call up another service company or, reroute that to, another part of the country.
Okay, you know what we do with water? We get water through Dunn, Harlan County, it goes to the county and they sell it back to us
At a higher rate.
at a higher rate. Can we make cuts?
Well, all that's changed now. Dunn is gonna be, plus 14%, July 1st. The county's gonna be plus 17%, July 1st. And, so we got to do some work on the water. We've
the
got a
county's 6.
regionalization study.
How much percentage are we raising on sewer?
we're not, we're gonna keep sewer the same.
Now, I got a
I
question.
meant for the county.
You said
Oh,
$4
They're going up.
I'm so sorry. I
17%.
thought you meant for the rate retail. For Meadow, it's going up 6%. For the Four Oaks line, it's 30%.
Say that again?
He was asking how much we were going up on the rate for the county. For the Meadow line, it's 6%. For the Four Oaks line, it's 30%.
But you said the rate we're going to now with the county, $4 and stuff, would basically be breaking even, correct?
Yes.
Then we're not really making any money.
Well,
It's not a profitable customer.
it's not supposed to be. It's a bulk, it's a bulk rate, right? I mean, it's supposed to be a,
We don't want to lose money.
Well, if
you
they're
don't want to
making-
lose it, but you want to break even.
If they're not making money off
We
us, I
definitely don't
understand that
wanna
we're
lose
not making money
money
off them.
this
If they're making money off us, we need to make the same thing off them.
Right,
They're making
right.
money off of us.
Well, they are on water.
They're making it on sewer.
Well, now, keep in mind, we buy 10% of our water from the county. We buy 90% from Dunn.
Just higher sewer rate. They making money off of it too.
Is it cheaper to buy it from the county than from Dunn?
No. Well,
What was the question?
is it cheaper to buy from the county than from Dunn?
You don't want to.
I'm just asking.
I don't think you want to, but
Way to get here in the amount that we need, we've got a small line that comes down 27
Yeah.
highway. And, we can supply that part of town, but all of us know that we have, low pressure over there because of, it's coming from Lily,
Yeah, but you said we get 90%
from Dunn.
from Dunn.
from
We buy
Dunn
90% from
and
Dunn,
10%
from the county. Hmm.
and that's not, when it comes out of the Cape Fear, we got a certain percentage that has to go back into the Cape Fear?
The interlocal agreement?
Yeah.
Well, right now, we're discharging everything back into the news, and we're able to do that because of the county contract, is what I'm understanding.
So the 10% is basically giving us an exit point.
Yeah.
I don't like the 30 years.
Okay.
I think
So-
that's what, I mean, I would like to know what kind of contract term we've got on our water.
So we'll have to go back to Jennifer Slusher, and 80% is where we want to say, if we reach 80%, we need to roll off, and then
Gives us
we'll,
a 10% buffer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. A 10% buffer before the state comes in, yeah. 20% before
Mayor
we're full.
Elmore today and asked him why they increased it 14%. He didn't know.
I'm sure
He
it's
told me he would find out.
because of all the
But
projects.
it sounds like they're doing it because they lost their town manager and lost their water girl.
Yeah.
She was one of the best there was.
She went to Apex or Fuquay.
I think they're a little bit nervous,
Fuquay.
but I think we're
Well, now
putting
their
some
manager
pressure on
just
them to try to
retired,
get them
didn't he?
off that 14%.
Yeah, and then Checkers retired in this month.
Okay.
80% is shorter term. Anything else?
And a
No,
shorter
just
term?
for you to table it till the
And a
next
shorter
meeting.
term.
What term? 5, 10?
Well, I think,
I have no reason, no understanding of why they wanted such a long term.
I do 5,
I'd do 5 as a max.
yeah.
I'd rather be 3.
you just want to treat
You can
them
make it
like
whatever
they
you
treat
want to, if you want to
Well,
make it
They
less.
sure, they sure want to knife to us about water tower funding as they were the rest of the cities.
That's what I'm talking about. They ought to be fair with anybody,
That's right.
but they ought to be fair with us.
That's right.
So can we table it? Can y'all?
Let's get together on this.
I make a motion that we table this until I can renegotiate a off limit and a term decrease.
Did you have to have something tonight, Kim?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
She just asked me. for
We just
a
have to have it before the end of June. So we got another month.
Right around the corner.
Well,
I know.
Plenty of
Before you
time.
know it.
If they need it, they ought to be pretty responsive.
So, this is, Jerry, this is going back on the agenda when?
It'll hopefully, I
It is
mean,
on 13th.
we'll have to get it on there the 13th.
If you table it, it should automatically come back unless you table it to a set date.
Okay.
Well, in the meantime, we'll talk to them to make sure or she'll talk to them to make sure they'll, go along with what the changes are.
And William's gonna get back in touch with you between now and the 13th. Elmore.
No, he'll get in touch with me tomorrow. He called me just before I left to come here, so I'm sure we get that.
Here, I made a motion to table.
There's a motion on the floor to table. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Good idea.
All right.
All right, we're down to that, whatchamacallit.
Yep. All right. So, bringing forth again tonight the 2023-24 budget. I'm not going to read through the manager letter again because I think I've got a slide, so I'm not going to read it word for word like I did at the last meeting. But the total budget is $15,788,879. The general fund is $5,857,903. Water and sewer is $4,291,79. Electric is $5,647,97. You can see here the general fund is 37%, the water and sewer is 17%, and the electric fund is 16%. And I'm going to pause for just a minute and get my computer because that's really hard for me to see. One second. Okay. The tax valuation, we did just recently get another evaluation, so that number has changed. It actually went up just a little bit, but the tax valuation is $361,123,324. We are still asking for a 4-cent tax increase from 55 to 59 for a total revenue of $2,130,627.61. And then DMV, we're estimating 200,000, and 1 penny yields $36,112.33. So, if an average home is $200,000 in value, and their tax rate currently is at 55 cents, then their tax bill is $1,100. when we increase it to 59 cent, their bill would be 11.80. So it's an $80 annual increase. Hold on. All right. The total general fund expenditure is $5,857,903. Encompassed in that is the Board of Commissioners budget at its 1%. The general government is 28%. In general government, we've got streets, central maintenance, building maintenance, just general government. And then for planning and zoning, it's 7%. The police department yields 31%. The fire department yields 17%. The museum is another 1%. Now keep in mind the museum is completely funded on its own by the Kennedy Trust Fund. And then the Parks and Recreation Department is 13%.
Kim, I wasn't here last time. In the planning and zoning budget, did we put anything for enforcement in case we're going to have to tear down any of these structures that we've noticed?
We did increase it. Give me 1 second. Currently, that it's $10,000. Now, keep in mind, we will attempt to do voluntary, and then we'll put lien on properties. Also, in the planning department, we approved for a code enforcement officer last year, but we couldn't fund it because we were going to fund that position with bringing back building inspections, but our hope was to bring back building inspections in July, August of last year, and then fund the code enforcement officer in January, February. But as y'all know, we couldn't bring inspections back until January, so that took that funding mechanism away. So we have funded it again in this budget for us to start looking for a code enforcement officer in July, and that will help with some of those code enforcement measures.
But our budget's $10,000 if we have to tear it down.
Budget is currently 10, yeah.
Okay.
Is there any more questions on this portion of it? What?
Gotta ask her.
How are our inspections paying off?
They're doing really well. Hold on 1 second. And Aaron, feel free as I'm pulling it up if you want to say anything. What is that? 30? It's 35.50. We're at 75,000 in revenue right now.
Since January 1.
Since January 1. Yeah. So it's
A lot of those buildings that is being built now in the commercial line
is going to be.
still going to the county.
I thought,
Cross Point was already with the county. Dale's first building was with the county, but it's my understanding he didn't pull the permit for the second building, so that'll come to us.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the 1 million square foot building is with the
Cross Point.
county.
Cross Point, well, yeah. That was sorry. The second building hasn't been, they haven't permitted the second one.
contracted.
No,
Jacob
the second-
for level 3.
We were not able to do that when they started, were we?
No, because we didn't have permitting, but we can do it now. I mean, when they permit the second building, that'll come to us.
Biggest one has been the hotel, but
Yeah.
we've had a few other commercial projects, renovations. We have one $2 million project that the permit hasn't been issued yet. So the Grand Magnolia, that hasn't been issued just yet. So we still have other projects that will be permitted soon, other than the large industrial buildings.
We're not taking in enough money to pay the inspector.
Well,
Jamie's doing all residential.
Jamie's doing all residential, and Jacob only comes, and he can do some commercial because he's probationary level 2. Yeah.
Okay.
So he can do.
One covers commercial as well.
Yeah.
But Jacob is doing the larger, but he's also helping with some plan review as well. Permits
But you said we did get the new hotel.
Yeah, we got that, yeah. That came in last month,
Only thing we need to get was cross point.
yeah.
It was 37,460.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And we wasn't prepared to get cross point.
Yeah.
No.
Had the people.
Yeah. Any other questions right now? Okay. General fund, so just generally across the board, we have been able to implement what the MAP study showed. It was roughly about $153,000. So that is in this budget. It is implemented. We were not able to do a COLA. I know that's something she has suggested, but we were not able to do that. What we have planned to do is to give up to a 5% merit increase around the month of January, February, once annual evaluations are done. We generally don't do evaluations till the end of December, 1st of January, and then typically they have to wait 6 months for a budget to come out before they get anything. So we want to kind of shorten that time frame, so have your evaluation and then get your merit increase. It's more fresh on their mind. If they did a bad job, why they didn't get a good increase, or if they're doing a great job, why they got a great increase, but they have to wait 6 months for it. So we do want to shorten that time limit. And keep in mind, this is for any employee who is not in a probationary period. So if they're new, they're not going to get, they'll get an evaluation, but they get steps for the first year. They get a step at 90, 180, and 365. So they would not be eligible for this 5% because they get steps throughout their first year probationary period. Does that make sense?
What was that number you spit out right then, 153,000?
Mm-hmm. It's in your book. Yep.
I think last time we did the in-house study, we were over 300,000 when Fred was here, right?
I
Weren't we about 300,000?
I believe.
When Fred was here when we did that in the retreat. So it came in less.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, I think when I sent y'all that I had finally gotten the numbers, I mean, really, we've done a lot of work. Not every department needed an increase. And I don't want to go fully into it because I've literally got it and then I went out of town, and so I've implemented it, and I haven't had time to even get with my department heads and say this is what each department's getting, but it is implemented in this budget.
Now, the 153,000 or so like the power, the water, sewer, they shouldn't be factored in this because theirs is determined on rates, correct?
No, they're in the salary study as well.
Right,
I mean,
but what I'm saying as far as like the Fund 10.
oh yeah, no. I'm saying across the board.
Okay.
Across the board. I know it's in that, but I'm generally speaking, salaries were across the board implemented among all departments.
Because the way you said it, I thought it was coming out of,
No,
Fund 10.
no, not at all.
Okay.
No. Keep in mind, your admin staff, so me, HR, finance, anybody in the finance department, we're usually a third. Yeah, we're usually split across the whole. What solely comes out of general fund is your police, your fire, Parks and Recreation, library, and then museum is a general fund expenditure, although it's self-funded. Okay, it doesn't come out of taxes.
Kim, does the lease cars show up in the police expenses?
It is.
Okay.
It is. It's in the capital line item.
Can you get what, and I don't know how hard it would be to do, what, instead of the 153 out of all departments, what would just affect the Fund 10?
I can't pull it like right now,
No,
but yeah, I can get that and yeah, absolutely. Yep, I sure can.
Something else.
Will you
Kim,
make a note of that, Angie?
153,000, does that also include the new hires that have not been hired yet, but you know that they're coming?
Yes and no. Okay, so they did look at it. I mean, they had to put them in our scale. Okay, but typically speaking, the higher leveled employees they didn't really fall under the salary study. They were pretty much where they needed to be. What we saw was more of our lower level staff is who is going to benefit from the salary study. They were the ones that were in that that area where they hadn't really gotten raises, or they were paid under when they were hired, you know. So there's across the top, you didn't see a lot come off of the salary study for them.
But we did a lot last year
We did.
before the salary study came in making some of these right.
Yes.
That were wrong.
We did. Absolutely.
Police, electrical,
Yeah.
and
That we did police. We mainly focused on police and electric over the last couple of years because those were the two
water and
hardest
sewer.
that we've done in house.
Yeah,
We've
last year.
we made a few. We did a few reclassifications of job titles based off of work that was being done. And so with those reclassifications, we had gone out ourselves and decided, you know, based off of other towns, kind of where they fell in line with other. I mean, we did it ourselves too. So we have made some adjustments, but. So, I mean, if they're not hired, they're in the budget. I mean, they're in the budget. They're funded based off of what the scales look like now.
But you're saying 153,000 is going to be, if we do this, to bring things up to par?
Yeah.
So Kim, even after the increases that some employees have, we are still in a compression state with some of the salaries.
No, she just talked about, I mean, we took what they suggested, that gets us out of that compression stage.
Well, they suggested, but it hasn't been implemented yet.
Right, but it is implemented in this budget, so it would fix it in July 1. What we can't do that she also suggested was a COLA. And there's no way I can do a COLA mixed in with the needs and services that we have to provide. And I know 4 cent that's a tough pill to swallow, and I understand that. But again, we've asked for increases over the last 2 years and haven't been able to get it, and we just can't balance off of fund balance again.
But if they don't get the COLA, what you're saying is in January, if they are high performers, they will fall somewhere on the merit.
They will get a
raise, so
merit.
they still have the opportunity to get a raise next year.
Absolutely.
It's just not guaranteed. So it's based on their performance. If they perform, they get a higher, up to a 5%.
Yes. You good?
Any other questions?
I see you rolling. The 5% is in there. Absolutely, it's in there.
For merit.
For merit. And that's 5%. I just did 5% for every employee. That doesn't mean every employee is going to get 5%. I mean, it's based off of how you are doing your job, but they have to have an evaluation, and I don't see every single employee every day. I can't tell you if they're performing high, low, or mediocre. That has to come from their department head. So that will come when they do their evaluations.
A 4% tax increase,
A 4 cent.
4 cent tax increase, still will get us where?
That's the
It'll
reason why
it'll get you balanced.
That's the reason why I wanted the number, in case you were wondering.
Yeah,
Fund,
yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I got you.
Tax increase is gonna give you $140,000 more.
Yeah.
But it's still not gonna hit 100.
But keep in mind, the 150 is not just general fund. That's total, the whole town, total. And it's implemented across.
She's gonna get us the numbers.
$60.
She's gonna get us the numbers that affect.
My
the
house
4
doesn't
cents
pay
raise.
the taxes that we need to get anything done. My business might be paying the taxes, and that's what I keep preaching. We need more commercial than we do houses.
Absolutely.
We've got just plenty of houses.
Okay, so in the general fund, we have added for capital outlay, we need a new knuckle boom truck. The boom on the truck is past its life cycle, so we are able to lease that vehicle through enterprise lease. So that lease is in here. The planning department, if we do add a code enforcement officer, even if we don't add a code enforcement officer, they need a new vehicle because they're driving around on a very, very old police charger that sometimes I'm worried that they're going to make it back. So they're going to need a new vehicle. That will be leased through Enterprise as well. It'll probably be a very small pickup truck. So those are the only two major purchases really that are going to be coming out of the general fund, other than your normal debt service that comes out of the fire department. Donations, I always like to make note of those. Chamber of Commerce, Council on Aging, Harbor, Joker Arts, American Red Cross, and the Singing Convention. So that's also in there. Any more questions on the general fund? Nothing's really changed from the last budget y'all got 2 weeks ago, other than I've tweaked some numbers here and there, but.
And we're still putting $100,000 to pay.
Additional, you mean from fund balance? No, that is actually not in there, I'm sorry, but we can.
It was implemented.
This year, but it's not in this up.
Last year.
Huh?
We took it out last year to balance.
Okay, yeah, so PAL bill is going into that, but I didn't do an additional 100,000 like we've done over the last few years for the project.
Yeah,
If you need to, I can do that. Yeah, if you want to bring that back, I can do that. It'll come out of fund balance, which I don't want to do. But that, I mean.
I just wondered if that was part of the.
No.
We've done it before.
No, that is not in there. I'm sorry. All right, so for the water and sewer fund. The total water and sewer fund is $4,290,179. We are asking for a 14% increase in just the water consumption. And there's also going to be increases in water tap fees just because the cost of materials has gone up. But keep in mind, water tap fees, that's new development. We are going to be able to go down on the cost of water meters because they have been able to leverage a different company to get those meters from, and they're at a cheaper price than what we had gotten from last year. Some of the capital improvements or equipment that we're going to need is as we work on our Man Street water tower, we need to also rehab the vault that's in there, the water vault. So that's listed in here. We upgraded some of our SCADA for water last year. This year we need to do pump stations. We also have a pump replacement in there. And then the down payment on the knuckle boom that you saw in the general fund is going to be in Fund 30. And then we have a driver that just does pump stations, and he needs a new vehicle, so that's listed in here as well. And then we're still, because we get revenue from the Verizon water tower, it's roughly $30,000. That will go into a project fund for perpetual maintenance on a water tower. So there you see a transfer to that capital outlay, to a capital project.
AT&T still interested in coming?
They are. Yeah, we're still working on site plan approvals with them. So we actually responded today to a map that they had sent us.
Have we got a cost on that tower, on that changeover from Verizon? Do we know if they're going to charge us for that?
They're not.
They're not?
Mm-mm.
When are we gonna start on the Benson? I see the South Johnson one's already started. They got the drapes.
We're not starting on that until after Mule Days. After Mule Days. We're going to fix the booster station like very quickly following the new budget year. We're going to get that rehabbed, and then that'll probably take a couple weeks, and then we'll let Mule Days come and go because we don't want to do anything during Mule Days like that. And then we'll probably go ahead and set up the new tower or the temporary tower probably the middle of September. And start moving stuff over on it, but we will not drape our tower until after Mule Days, probably about the first week in October.
Now, the new vehicles that we're looking at, have we got rid of or utilizing what we've got that's in the electrical department down there? It's not the electrical department. The, 250 pickup truck that had the lift on the front of it?
You talking about, that's in the Public Works Department.
Yeah. But I mean, if it's sitting there, we can't use it for anything.
We're gonna scrap that, but we can't. So when we came to you guys and asked for 2 new vehicles, we only got 1. So we haven't been able to replace it yet. I mean, they can use it. They try not to, because again, that's another vehicle that could leave us on the side of a road. But we can't, we haven't sold it yet. We're gonna sell it once we are able to get that second vehicle in. And then that, we can put the scraper on that,
Okay.
on a new vehicle.
Yeah, the one I'm talking about, you
Yeah.
can put the scraper on, but it hadn't been moved in 2 months.
Well,
6 months, I'm sorry.
I mean,
Because I went out there to look at it to see if we could get anything for it, and I wasn't interested in it.
well, honestly, I mean, we can sell it, but we don't want to sell it in case we need it. And that's the thing. Right now we're sharing trucks. They don't want to drive that truck. It's not in good shape.
Didn't you have a deal at one time, though, that they were going to trade you out of that truck to get a new one?
I did, and the dealer sold the truck before we got it approved.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
I had 2 trucks, and they sold both of them. So we were able to get another one. That's the GMC that you see Jeremy driving.
Right.
But we have not been, Chevrolet. It's a Chevrolet, I'm sorry. Glenn has a GMC. But we haven't been able to get the second one that was approved.
Are we going to be able to get anything at all for the knuckle boot?
I will send it to, once we get everything finalized, I will send it to Chrissy at Enterprise, and she will put it up for auction. So I anticipate we'll get something for it.
Where are you, what do you need, a 2,500 or a 3,500 for that scraper? 'Cause trucks are on the lots now.
I'll have to go back and look at my paperwork.
Talk about later.
That was months ago. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Okay. Any other questions on water and sewer? Let me make sure I'm
Are
not
we
missing.
gonna break even this year?
That's my goal. Every year. All right. Electric fund is $5,640,797. Again, I'll reiterate, the rate committee is supposed to meet, the NCMPA rate committee is supposed to meet in September. Right now, they're estimating a 3% increase on our wholesale, but it will not be until April of '24. But that number's changed every time I've gone to the rate committee meeting for the last year. So until I know for sure that's what it's going to be, until the rate committee's approved it and the board has approved it, I'm not touching the electric rate fee at this time. Okay, we'll get the rates, we'll know in September. It'll probably go to the NCMPA board in October, November timeframe, and then I can sit down, Angie and I, and look at where we're currently stand and see if we have to do an increase for the last 2-3 months of the fiscal year, or if it can wait till the new fiscal year. So we will bring that back to the board closer to that time.
So the NCMPA rate increase was April of '24,
Yeah.
it's '23 on here.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, that was a typo. 24. The only thing in the electric fund that we are going to increase are area lights, just because the cost of the halogens have gone up. So Glenn has asked that we do a small increase on that. You'll see that on the fee schedule. Combined, well, that looks bad. Combined water and sewer, because they share a building now. Utilities shares that building. You have water and you have electric in there. There's still some things that need to be done on the yard and inside the building that will be split 50-50. So you'll see both of those in the budgets. We need a forklift for the warehouse, because we are pulling stuff off trucks, like transformers and things, and they do have that second floor that they can put stuff on and store, but we don't have a way to get up there without them carrying it right now. We still need to have a fence put around the perimeter of the new building. We had a fence at our old building, so essentially all that's going to come down, but we've got to put a perimeter around ours. They would like to have a pole shed out there so they can put some equipment outside underneath the pole shed. And then for circulation of the warehouse, I don't know if y'all have been in there when it's 90 degrees outside, but that warehouse does not circulate air very well. So for the employees, we're going to put 2 of the big fans in there to help circulate air, and that will circulate it in the winter and in the summer. So both of those are captured in both budgets, or all of those are captured in both budgets. Any questions? Okay. So in total, like I said, the full budget is $15,788,879. We again, my door is always open. I'm welcome to have you guys come in. We can go over it line item by line item if you want to. I have all my notes here. We are going to have a public hearing at the next board meeting. It should. Okay. So it's being advertised to have a public hearing at the next board meeting, in hopes for everybody's good with this budget and it'll get approved. But I need to know, because keep in mind, we have to have it approved by June 30th. So we only have 2 more meetings before it has to be approved. So if you want a meeting, call me and we'll set one up. And that's for the citizenry too as well. My door is always open to have a conversation.
Let's be serious about what you just said, because it's absolutely a must that at the next meeting, we know where we are, and we, the public, would be the only one to stop it. And, there's still some questions that's in there, but at least it's a balanced budget. So if you've got any ideas, be sure and get them before we come to the next meeting.
Yes, please.
You done knocked one of my loopholes out. You done told me that we didn't allocate $100,000 for paving.
Sorry. All right. Well, that is all I have. If y'all have no other questions.
Did you want to cover any fees?
Hey, I'm going to let Angie do some talking for a little bit. I'm going to let Angie talk for a little bit.
Expensive and skinny.
In your packet, well, on your table tonight, you have the proposed fee schedule for 23-24. I'm not going to go through because Kim has touched the base on a lot of the fees that are going to be changing. There's going to be some increase in planning fees. That's just, we're trying to keep in line with other surrounding municipalities. She talked about the electric. The only thing that would be changing in there at this effective July 1 would be the area lights, and that's just due to the increase in cost of materials. With the water and sewer, effective with the new fiscal year, there will be no longer a charge for outside water and sewer rates. For new customers, existing customers are already grandfathered in.
Let me make a quick note. That is based off of our meeting that we had in February, where we said if they want our services, they need to annex. So we have to grandfather in who's already there, but we've already kind of been doing that, like telling people, but it'll be official. It's kind of listed now in the new fee schedule as of July 1. So we've been telling people that, we've been practicing it, but now it's kind of there in writing.
Will include trash that we're grandfathering into? Or?
Yeah, it'll have to for right. I mean, I'm gonna still send letters, but yeah.
Okay.
I didn't hear what you said. I'm sorry.
I was just wondering, what about the trash, people got that straightened out.
Not yet.
Okay. In library, the copy fees will be going up. That's just because there's a increased cost in paper, our contract and copier contract and everything. Parks and Rec, some of the fees there will be increased. Once again, that's to keep in line with our other surrounding municipalities. And then the fire department, we have increased some fees there, also to keep in line with other surrounding communities.
And added.
And we added
fees to the fire department.
We added a few fees to the fire department that were not.
What have we in?
We added a lot. Hold on, let me pull it up.
Hold
All the
on,
way
I
to
got
the back.
fire.
Page 22. You're all in yellow.
Just everything in yellow.
is the changes. Yeah, if you look on page 22, that's the, as you can see, there's a lot of changes for the fees in fire department. Alan, do you have anything you want to add to the fire?
I mean, we just adjusted some square footage on our inspection side, and then we added some permit fees and, things for different, all the plan reviews that we do, and, the annual fire inspection, but up front on the fire suppression side for different, systems.
Yeah, this
systems, just different things like that.
Zoning compliance, fire inspection, food truck fire inspection, ABC, hazardous material review, fire protection system permits. So like he was saying, sprinklers, fire pumps, fire suppression systems and hoods, fire alarm systems, any other alarm, smoke control, and then any additional inspection that comes under building.
Compares to anything y'all do.
Absolutely. The only thing we
don't
pretty
wanna
much
know.
charge for is.
We're catching up.
For what y'all charge.
Free,
We're definitely.
Oh, is it?
unless they had to return. You don't wanna know what we do.
Do y'all have any questions?
All of the biggest thing on new construction, most all that stuff in here, just be on new construction.
Okay, that's all.
You all finished?
I am, unless there's any questions. It would be on when you guys think
Thanks, Andrew.
Town manager.
We will be closed on Monday in observance of Memorial Day. Sundown and Downtown concert is June the 8th. They're having the Band of Oz at the Grove starting at 5:30. And June the 9th is our first installment of Friday Night Sports, where we used to have Friday Night Hoops. They've changed it up, and they're doing kind of different sports every week. They're still going to have basketball in the gym for some of the older kids if they want to do it, but they'll, I think, wiffle ball and soccer and all kinds of stuff to kind of hopefully bring out more kids into the community to interact with our police department and our Parks and Rec.
The Friday night sports,
Friday night hoops.
is that, gonna continue then into July and August with that, the basketball
It'll
or sports? I reckon?
sports, yes, it'll continue. That's just our first night of it.
Have everybody already signed up, that's gonna sponsor?
I believe they have, yeah, we've gotten them.
We already have our sponsors and the t-shirts and stuff will be printed out.
Man,
Well, I had tons to talk about, but since we've got more to go and people waiting, I'll just save it for later. I don't have anything unless there are questions.
I mean, is it important?
No, I'm joking. I don't have anything to talk about.
You could've just said no.
If it is, we'd be in closed session to talk about it if it was really
He's
important.
not sure it's important, we don't want him to talk. He won't.
I don't know. I'm mindful of time. If it's not important, I won't say anything.
Max?
I don't have anything, just FYI, South Johnston softball team lost tonight 2-0, so they're done.
Oh,
I got a question as far as parking pertaining out there at Vias's Park. Is there a set number of hours when nobody can park out there? I rode by and I've not seen any signs. The reason why I'm asking is the police stopped certain somebody and asked him, was that their vehicle? And he told them, yeah, and they told them they couldn't park there because it was after hours.
Where was it at? Was it on Lee Street or was it in the park
I
where
have to find out.
where the gym was?
I don't know. I have to find out. But I rode out there. There's no sign.
There's not.
Yeah,
We'll look into it.
because my son.
Oh. Well, let me know where it was parked.
What was he doing out there?
He's playing Pokemon Go.
Oh, fun.
So
Innocent.
he said,
he
no,
did
you
say he's
didn't.
playing Pokemon Go, but I'm just curious, 'cause they told me that, and I rode out there and looked, and I'm like, there ain't even no sign.
Probably.
I know Pokemon go after 10 o'clock or something like that.
I read.
Matt, listen.
But I was just asking.
I wrote it down.
Okay, Cassandra.
I have nothing to report.
Will?
Still have a problem with trash pickup, limbs and stuff, they just don't know, and I don't really think it's being done right. We had our knuckle boom truck out Monday. Now, I noticed on Lincoln Street, right before you get to Jerry's, and these people have said nothing to me, but this past weekend, they cut their hedges back, and they stacked about 10 little piles that was 4 by 4 by what they thought they were supposed to do, because I know why they did it. I would have put it all in one pile. Now, the truck came through on Monday, went right by there twice, and picked up piles everywhere else, but they didn't touch those, and they're still out there if you need to take a look at them. And there's other piles around town where people have cut their hedges back. And another one's on Lincoln Street that I saw in Wynn Graham's old house. They cut some hedges back, and it looks like the right size pile for the truck to pick up. I would really like to see, if we're going to get a new knuckle boom truck, let's do away with a trash can and pay the knuckle boom truck an extra little bit to pick up these piles. I'm not talking about leaves now. I'm talking about stuff that the best I can read from the literature that y'all put out, I would have thought they would have picked it up.
Well, I thought the pile had to be 4 by 4.
Well, it's
I
4
mean,
by
it
4.
could be more than 4 by 4.
What?
It's
Going
not
to your
supposed to be.
house right there at the Medlin house.
Well, they pulled up alder bushes. That's not just.
They're not,
cutting.
it's not
That's
supposed to have any leaves
real
on it,
thing.
right? There's no leaves or grass supposed to be in that, it's just for sticks.
There's
limbs.
no leaves.
They will get hedges, but if they had multiple piles, it's probably not compliant. I mean, that's kind of,
Well, then they've got 4 by 4, 4 by 4. Let's do 12 by 12, and then it's not in compliance. And I don't know, but it's still there.
have you
And
got
they
any
did it
piles up
last
front?
weekend.
Okay.
No, we haven't gotten in talking about anybody that I'm.
Well, it's right down from your house.
I know Tim and I went to a house that the guy had cut all his bushes off and had piled them out in the ditch all the way down his lot, and they didn't pick it up.
'Cause it's way
And
incompliant.
Tim told him that you pay us $250, we'll pick it up.
Exactly. It's one
Because
pile.
It's a big
4 by 4.
pile that's more than 4.
These are separate piles.
Right, but one pile per property is kind of where they're at. I mean, it's one 4 by 4 pile per property. That is, and I'll find, I just texted Jeremy, but it's probably not in compliance.
Let's get
It's
it.
all messed
Let's
up.
get it straight. I think they're trying to be in compliance, and it's just not happening. Let's find out what compliance is and do it.
Well, we sent it out. We've told everybody what compliance is.
Okay.
It's one pile. I mean,
We also have given anybody that calls to the opportunity, because of recycling, they can get we'll take the recycling and give them another yard.
Yeah.
Yard waste.
Yeah, and one of my neighbors did that, and that's fine. But I'm talking about people that think they're doing it right, because I know how those piles are stacked, and that's why they put it in 8 different piles right before you get to Jerry's house. And I thought, well, it would be picked up, and it's not.
who told you it would be picked up?
I thought it
The
would
multiple
be picked
piles?
up. Yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
He was, they did see it. They were going to stop by and tell the homeowner that it's putting out that many piles one at a time. You can't. So it was non-compliant because it was too many piles. It's one pile per property. So one of one of our supervisors was gonna go by there and talk to them. I don't know if they have or not yet, but I'm getting this from the
I
super.
reckon Chuck Lee just spoiled everybody when he was
He
out
did.
picking it up.
He absolutely did.
And they still don't get it.
I mean, no, but Chuck did. Chuck went above and beyond. We really got, I mean, it was not good when we lost Chuck as a contractor. It was not. We did. Because he would come on Sundays and he would canvass the neighborhood and then he'd come back on Monday and make sure he got everything. I mean, yeah, Chuck was amazing. I don't negate that one bit.
Okay.
But our ordinance, I mean, we have it in our ordinance that if you have more than one pile or if it's non-compliant, we're happy to come and get it with a truckload. It's $250.
And the guy we talked to was tickled to death to get someone to come pick it up. And he told me how great that fellow was that came and picked it up and paid him $250.
It's a service.
Deal.
You have anything?
I'm just gonna mention again, I think me and Kim talked about this the other day, I know for a fact on some, that stickers have not been updated on the trash cans on our street, so. I know-
Angie's got a.
Okay, we have an update on that.
Okay.
Last week, GFL came and brought us all the stickers, and we were gonna distribute them to the customers. Well, maybe it was Monday, GFL came back, some little girl to collect the stickers, and I said, are you gonna put them out now? She said, they told me to come get them and go around and put out all these stickers.
Okay.
So, but then she come back a little bit later to tell me that some of the stickers were not town of Benson, they were for another town. So, she did not put them out though on the cans. She called it before that, so she was taking them back to GFL to try to get that. So that's where we are as far as the calendars.
But they're not going to distribute them. I mean, I've told them, you know, they're not on. I don't care what you say. You haven't gone to every house and put them on there. I got proof, and they're like, well, I mean, at this point, I'm sure they feel like we're 6 months in almost. They're not going. I mean, but
If you get it, could you put it on Facebook? Where you
oh,
can
absolutely,
bring it-
absolutely.
I've got the same cans that I had from day one, and you can't read any stickers on it.
Oh, I believe you, and I've
Ain't nobody come.
gone after them several times.
And let me ask you one other thing. What do we, the 95 interchange, 40 interchange, have we still got the contract to do that?
They won't let it. That's another thing that I'm dealing with DOT and Flatiron on. They've told our contractor not to mow, so we're.
That's fine. That's what I told the person that called
Yes.
me, that we could not do anything because of the construction.
Yes, and Flatiron did come, but they mowed the dog park. So when I complained about it, they came and mowed the dog park. And I sent another email to a DOT guy, the same one that got them to come the first time, on Friday, and I've yet to hear back. So, I mean, we're working on it, but they told our contractor not to mow it. And I'm getting very close to just telling Jeremy to ride out there and mow it. Just, if DOT.
Well, there's a lot of,
We're getting him to do, we're going to get him to do other things. We've got some pump stations that we need him to mow, so we're going to trade it out. Because I knew that question was going to come. We're going to trade it out.
Are you done?
well, it's a mess.
You done?
Oh, it looks terrible.
I reckon, unless you bring up something else.
Yeah, I just, so one other thing to say, and I'm not gonna get into a lot of detail unless y'all want to, because I know they wanna get home, and I do too. Y'all know Kim and I got back from Las Vegas. You'll probably get an update. We got back from 6 yesterday, 6 o'clock yesterday
Yeah,
morning.
7, yeah.
6, 7 yesterday morning. I don't know. I'm still not caught up with the time change. But Electric City sent us out there to the retail conference again. We split up on Sunday, took a bunch of classes, and then Monday and Tuesday we met with, I don't know, I think I met with 6. I don't know how many
Yeah,
we met. We had probably 10 to 12
Yeah.
restaurant representatives trying to get us something. Got our heart broke on some parts of the town, right? So that they're just not going to happen as growth right now. But we were able to sit down for a few hours with several of them and identify several parcels that they were interested in. I had a follow-up call this morning. I got one coming to town next week. And so we're going to be knocking on some doors, some Publix, and looking for some help, because they know where they want to go and they want to be in Benson. It's just a matter of putting the numbers together.
Was there anybody else there representing Johnson County or Benson?
Chris Johnson was there from the County Economic Development, and then Carl and Jennings Gray and our representative Kellyanne from Electric Cities were there representing all of Electric Cities
Right.
communities, but Chris was there representing
The county.
as a whole, and then Kim and I were there from Benson. So, so thanks to Electric Cities for making that happen for us. They were a big help this weekend. So.
How much did you win?
Is that all?
I lost $3 at blackjack, and I got mad and left because I'm not a gambler. I worked too hard for my money.
And I didn't. I didn't gamble.
How much did you win?
Stays in Vegas.
My wife doesn't tell me what she gambled. We don't talk about it.
Yeah.
I want to bring y'all up to date on something that happened in the legislature yesterday.
Never do.
All right.
As all of you know, the counties are trying to do away with ETJ. And we found out, we thought it was dead, but we found out, I got a call early yesterday morning that they were gonna have a hearing that day. So I called Sawyer and told him that we were very much opposed to that. He's on the committee, and he said, I'll call you when I get to the office. Well, he called me just as we were going in the committee meeting, and he said, what do you want me to take out of it? And I said, I want you to kill the bill. And he said, I don't know whether that's going to happen or not. Mr. Lee, the senator, is really pushing this thing. But he called back in the afternoon and said they had changed it, that Johnson County was not on the list anymore, and that any town, any county that was under 50,000 would be in it. And we sent him a message back and say that's just not acceptable. So they're still working on that, but we're hoping that that bill is going to die, because that would really hurt us if they did away with ETJ.
Yeah.
Anything else that we need to have? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Oh, we're not
We got-
All in
adjourning.
favor, say aye.
We're not
Oh.
adjourning.
No, we gotta do a joint. We gotta bring the planning
We
board
gotta
up.
bring the planning board in. I'd like to make a motion for like a 3-minute recess before we meet with them.
You got to do the planning board, the joint meeting.
Your microphone's still on too.
Can we do a 3-minute recess?
Let's take a 2-second break.
I ain't that quick.
You just wait, the older you get.
Introduce this lady, or she just,
I can introduce.
she gonna introduce.
You want to go? This is Karen. She's from Withers Ravenel, and she is the one that is doing our UDO.
Yes, so thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. I know this is a late evening. I don't know how late your meetings normally go, but I will try to wrap this up so y'all are home.
8:30 usually.
Okay,
No,
then I
no.
really got to talk fast.
Ever.
Okay. So y'all saw this slide at the retreat. I'm bringing it up just again to refresh your memory where we are in this process. So you'll recall that about 2 years ago, you adopted your comprehensive plan, which laid out your land use, your future land use, and also gave a bunch of recommendations that we'll go over in a second to your UDO. We took those recommendations. We've engaged with the community. Planning Board has a couple of members here that are on our steering committee as well. We've interviewed staff. We interviewed some of your department heads to kind of come together and get a good understanding of the process. And we put together an ordinance assessment. That ordinance assessment is available. I, again, believe that was in your packets for your retreat. So you should have a copy of that. From there, we take the recommendations in that ordinance assessment, and we are now in the process of updating the code. So some of the recommendations that came out of your comprehensive plan, this is just a sampling of them. Expand your downtown overlay district to permit signage towards side streets, including Market Street. So right now, there's, it's hard to see some of those signs. So that was one of the recommendations. Also requires stub streets to landlocked parcels. Update the UDC to strengthen code enforcement. Establish a commercial corridor overlay district along I-95, I-40, and US 301. Also to amend the UDC to require sidewalk installation along all non-residential projects and subdivisions. And then modify the UDC to require burial of new non-residential utilities. So these are all types of things that we can take out of that comprehensive plan and write rules and regulations within your UDO. This is an excerpt real quick from the ordinance assessment. So it gives very clear directions on the things that we're going to update. This is just an example of Articles 1 and 2. We're currently, Article 1 is pretty much ready to be delivered to Planning Board or our steering committee for some recommendation. But basically, we've gone through and just updated some things along 160D. We consolidated some language and those types of cleanup. And then what we'll do is, as we go through each of the articles, we'll make sure that the ordinance language is consistent throughout, and that, we're taking your input and also that of the steering committee. So the basic, what we're working on now with the steering committee and what we were coming here tonight or in the near future is to really get your feedback. And I don't obviously want to start a discussion at 10 o'clock at night, but what we're asking you to do is take a look through that ordinance assessment. And then these are some of those items that we need direction from. And we're getting our direction right now from staff and from the steering committee. But then we're going to start bringing these items to you. So you'll see them, because we don't want to just present to you at the very final minute, oh, here's our new UDO, and for you not to have any buy-in into that process. So we're really trying to, that's why we're coming to you tonight, to kind of give you this update and then get some of this feedback. So these are some of the discussion items that we started with our steering committee. So we're talking about special uses. Right now you have a minor and major special use. If you may recall, or you know this, special uses are a quasi-judicial procedure, which sometimes can cause a little bit of difficulty. It also excludes your planning board, or it should exclude your planning board, because in a quasi-judicial process, you're not supposed to have ex parte communication. So that should eliminate your planning board from that discussion. It also does a good job of also eliminating your public input, because in order for someone to speak on a special use permit or anybody to speak in a quasi-judicial, they have to be sworn in and they have to give expert witness. So if they're not an expert on land use or they're not an expert on property values, they technically are not allowed to speak at a quasi-judicial hearing. So, so there's some talk about removing that special use permit process, except for extreme uses, such as, something that has a, is a real big nuisance. So anything that's beyond a nuisance might switch over to what's the bullet below it, which is conditional zoning. Conditional zoning is a legislative process, so that would come before you for approval. But the public is allowed to speak. That also allows you to put conditions on zoning changes or certain things. And then that also can possibly eliminate your use for your PUD districts, as well as maybe your TNDs and all those types of flexible types of zoning that allows that to come under conditional zoning as well. So those are some of the items that we're talking about right now, like I said, with the steering committee. We also, at our last meeting, discussed accessory dwelling units. There's a big push in the planning world to allow accessory dwelling units. You might refer to them as, granny flats or in-law suites. Those are types of accessory dwelling units where it allows for an increase in density in your neighborhoods, but not an extreme an extreme increase in density. What it does is allow for an affordable housing option for family members. And those also not associated with your family, because again, those could be used for rentals, and we could write language to discourage short-term rentals, but accessory dwelling units are one of those ways of the future, as a lot of towns in the Triangle are eliminating single-family residential zoning. This allows you to keep single-family residential zoning, but allow for these accessory dwelling units. Other things that we're considering are permitting high-density residential uses by right. Right now, some of your higher-density multifamily townhouses are allowed only by special use. And again, trying to eliminate those barriers to affordable housing. We're really trying to get that. And when I say affordable housing, this is just means so that your teachers, your police officers, and everyone else who works in your community can live here. You don't want to get to the point where you're seeing communities, again, throughout the Triangle, where they've pretty much outpriced their residents. So that teachers, again, police officers, are living outside the community, and you don't want that. So we're trying to, again, eliminate the future trajectory of outpricing your residents. Some of the other items that we're talking about are signs, and which signs are appropriate in which zoning districts, and then what signs need board approval, because right now I think anything over 8 feet, we said, requires a board approval. So we're talking about maybe it's appropriate in commercial districts that anything over 8 feet is appropriate, and you wouldn't need to review that, and that could be just a staff approval. We're talking about where and when sidewalks should be provided. Is that always needed? Are sidewalks always needed, especially when there's no curb or gutter? And should sidewalks always be provided on one side of the street, two sides of the street? Again, some of these discussion items. And then the last one, open space, should that be required? Right now, it's usually a percentage of residential neighborhoods, but we're seeing a trend towards putting open space in commercial and industrial developments to allow recreation areas or open spaces for people who visit the business, especially for your visibility on the highway, who are getting a lot of people stopping as they travel through. This is nice for people who want to take their dog for a walk, or who want to stop and have a picnic lunch and don't want to sit outside rather than having to sit inside. So again, these are just some of the items that we're discussing. We're looking for direction from it. A lot of these questions are posed in that ordinance assessment. So if you want to, again, flip through that ordinance assessment, and if you have an opinion on one of these topics or more than one of these topics, let us know, because we're just trying to look for feedback. This isn't our code that we're writing. I mean, we're writing it, but it's really based on your feedback and your input and what your town wants to see. So some of our next steps, and then I'm wrapping this up, is basically we're going to continue to meet with the steering committee for the next the duration of this project. We should be having a full draft of this of all the articles. Right now it's article by article we're going to be releasing over the next few months. We would expect by, I think, early September that we'll have a full draft of this. That's when you'll see it again. And then what we're going to do is, just like this was supposed to be sort of a workshop where we kind of get more interactive feedback, we really want to sit down and have a meeting dedicated with just planning board and the Board of Commissioners to kind of go through this ordinance, and we'll have a document that'll tell you like everything that we've changed. And because we started redlining and moving stuff around, and I don't know if you've ever read a redline document where 90% of the document changes. It's like giving yourself a headache. So what we're going to do is probably just rewrite the ordinance with the updates, and then provide you with like a little table that says, oh, this used to be in this section, it's now in this section, so that you can compare the two documents. And then, like I said, we want to sit down with you and have a workshop and really get your feedback and input. That will require a little pre-reading, hopefully, on your end. And I know you're already busy, so I don't want to, burden you with that entire document. But remember that UDO does become law, and the planning board, you all have to enforce it. So again, it needs to be your document. And then again, adoption is planned for October, November. We'll probably go to the planning board for a recommendation in October, and then before you in November for adoption. And that is about it. So that's my email. You probably remember Daniel Rao. He was another member of our team. He is also working on this ordinance assessment, and he helped with the comprehensive plan, so he's still involved in the process. But if you have any questions or comments, or if you've read through that ordinance assessment and you need any other clarification, please just let me know. All right. Now you could adjourn. Is that it? Okay.
I want to tell you, thank you for the work y'all are doing. That's a big job and tough work.
Yes, I thrive on that. This is like what I love to do. And I love to have the conversations that we have in our steering committee. So I appreciate it. Anytime you guys want to, talk about anything tough in planning, it's really a great conversation. So thanks.
Anything else? This time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed, no. Good night.
Good night. Thank y'all for hanging in there.
About 25 minutes before 10:30.
Who said 10:30?